you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Yeah, we can tighten that up a little bit. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit, with the crazy little green screen shirt today. By the time I realized that was going on, it was too late, so it is what it is. Hope that doesn't bother anybody's eyes. All right, couple show announcements. Again, just a reminder. If you didn't see it on Locals, the book club announcement was made. You can go ahead and grab it. Check your local stores first. I put the Amazon link up. Jack Snyder, Myths of Empire, we're going to start with. But you may want to check those local stores because Amazon's link is so delayed and backed up, which is why we don't have a set date. We just know it will be in April, 3 p.m. on Sundays, Eastern Standard Time. All right. And I'm tracking it. Hopefully it gets to somebody sooner rather than later. And we can start ASAP because of everything that's going on. It's a perfect book to start with. All right, April Fool's Day. So you jokesters, hope you have a good one. Hope you've been planning it out. We tend to have a little bit of fun in our household. My kids are jokesters and pranksters, so I'm sure at some point today, when I let my guard down, they will get me. All right, so with that in mind, we're going to have Joe Nierman on, a.k.a. Good Lawgic, and we're going to talk about a couple of stories that have been recently in the news, which I'm going to precede here with some polling, all right? Because it's almost like, does it matter what the public says, right? Or will people just continue to march down this path? Do parents need on the books a Bill of Rights? Or can they elect new leaders, for instance, in Virginia, which is one of the examples we'll show, because they don't like maybe what's going on in the classroom with their children. Does it matter? Or does there need to be new laws on the books right now? Is it so overwhelming? People are already ignoring what the public really thinks about some of these issues, whether no matter how crazy they may think that some of these new positions are, yet still we continue to move forward without any recognition that the electorate, the people, parents specifically, don't like or support this. All right, so we're going to talk about with Joe, because I'm not a lawyer. I will show you the public opinion side of it, and then we'll ask Joe about the legal side of it, and he'll share with us his legal knowledge about whether or not there's a lot at this point parents can do if schools are telling their children things that they don't agree with or is not appropriate, and which you'll see soon is the overwhelming majority of the country. But we'll get into that. And then, of course, we'll have Don on. He'll come on and talk about an interview we had this week that was fantastic on one of the shows that he does on his channels. And then we'll jump into our Q&A. So get your questions ready. All right. And I may even just bob in and out of Q&A because it does seem that we never get to them all. And that's honestly, if I did 4-hour show, I probably wouldn't get to them all. But here, let's actually start with one right now. Why does Biden's approval never seem to dip below 40% on our CP? I don't believe his true approval is near that high. We've had him in the 30s, even before others began to show him in the 30s. It really is not comparable. There's been a lot of comparisons lately, and that's a great question. It's really not comparable to the trends we saw under Donald Trump, for instance, or Barack Obama, maybe a little bit more comparable to Obama and Bush. The fact, I'll get into the inner workings of that in a second. And actually, I'll pull up some crosstabs and show you how he got to, or how he got back to 40% this month with us, and what prevents him from collapsing into the 30s. All right. And I'll show you with our polling why that is. But the truth is that if you gave, and I have to say this in order to like answer this fully, if you gave 4 different pollsters the same data set, you're going to get 4 different results because of the assumptions that pollsters make and the weighting variables that they use to weight the results. The fact of the matter is, there are some pollsters out there that under Donald Trump, Trump's approval was never that low. It was never that low. We never had Donald Trump fall into the 30s, ever. There was always 38 to 40% of the country that would approve of Donald Trump no matter what he did. The problem is that most of these pollsters don't know how to reach these people. And if they do reach them, they don't know how to keep them on the phone or keep them interested long enough to be able to collect their full responses and move on. They view them, pollsters in general, Trump supporters, view them as part of the media now. And with that comes that label that I'm talking to the enemy. So it is a different, it's a different ball game. You can look at Biden's approval now and see that it is lower than it was under Donald Trump at this point in his presidency. A lot lower, actually. And Donald Trump right now is the most popular politician in the United States. But, and I know he would hate even me calling him a politician, but you know what I mean. Those pollsters who were polling Donald Trump's approval and had him in the 30s ended up being the worst pollsters when the election came around. And if you can't poll an election, you can't poll anything else. So if you're wrong about vote preference, believe me, you're wrong about approval rating, and you're wrong about opinions on issues. You're wrong about everything. The only test that that you can give to us is that election day vote preference test. That's the only way you can gauge whether or not we're being accurate or not. And the fact is, you're going to have these pollsters, the worst repeat offenders as always, that are never going to fix some of these mistakes. They're the pollsters who repeatedly came in low for Trump, and they're the pollsters now who repeatedly come in higher for Biden. When the rest of us have Biden at 36 to 38%, they're at like 43, 44. And that's not going to change. The fact is, look, when the averages for RCP first came out, I loved them. I thought it was cool. I did. I thought, general principle behind it. It's almost a way to collect a larger sample to reduce the sampling error. So the average of polls would outperform typically individual polls. That's not really true anymore for a few reasons. One, they choose to aggregate garbage and ignore some others that do a lot better of a job when it comes to election day. There's several of us that are not included in the averages for one reason or other, whether it's smears or whether they just haven't, done their due diligence. We have on numerous occasions offered Tom Bevan carte blanche so he could go through our stuff if that made him feel better. He never took it up because the fact is he doesn't have the gumption to challenge, the status quo in this industry. So he's just not going to do it. So instead, he'd rather put absolute trash in his average and, be embarrassed all the time than he would to like force other pollsters to do a better job. Because once those of us who they're going to be forced to up their game. And right now they have no incentive to do that. So unfortunately, RCP's average is filled with junk, and like any it's an aggregate average, but think of it more too as like a model, and the model is only as good as the data that you're using to source the model, right? What variables are in that model? In this case, those variables would be the results of individual polls and how accurate or trustworthy are those poll numbers. And the truth is, they're not. So the rest of the average has lagged the rest of us who have done a better job at election prediction in the last 3-4 cycles. So, that's part of it. How many times do you put in the same pollster that hasn't gotten an election correctly in like 4 cycles, yet they're the pollster that's holding him from dipping into the 30s, right? Or they were the pollsters that were forcing Trump into the 30s when Trump really was never in the 30s. I mean, that's ridiculous. 38% is, you would very, very difficult if you had good representation to be able to push Trump at like 38. Very difficult because there's just this core group. It's like 35, 40% at any given time that just love him no matter what. So, or not even love him, but will say they approve of him. And the rest of it, they're not going to break because the media had a bad news cycle or something. And that's what they suggested what was going on. And it was really just traditional at best, if it wasn't intentional. It was them falling prey to traditional response bias. Like a Trump supporter during the Mueller investigation is going to tell a pollster to go screw off. I don't want to talk to you right now. That's a typical response bias. But a lot of this, at this point, can we really make the case that these people are doing this on accident, putting in their best effort anymore? Really? I don't think so. All right, not the vast majority of them. Some of them probably just really are that bad at their job, folks, but the vast majority, absolutely not. So realistically, he came to 40% in our polling this month, back up to 40%, as opposed to continuing to slide to maybe like 35, 36. I think we had a mild rally around the flag effect. And here, I'll show it to you. Let's pull up some of the crosstabs and I'll show you what happened here. We can do something very basic by party, but we can also look at it in a lot more depth and detail. But generally speaking, before all the rally around the flag was going on, and I know I'll make it bigger. Let me disappear for a hot second. Independents. Let's go to party detail where we separate true non-party affiliated independents with the something else category. All right. Let's go down to Biden's approval. Something else still remained in the 20s. Independents, which were at like 26, 28, increased to about 30.2 here, as you can see. All right. And Democrats came down a little bit and their disapproval. Excuse me. Here, let's go over here. They came down a little bit from nearing 20% disapprove to about 15.1. All right. Republicans ticked up a little bit. So, I mean, that definitely, it all has an impact. But generally speaking, you saw a little bit of shoring up among Democrats. Not good by any measure, because there's a liberal base of the Democratic Party that fractured over the war. So even though some of those more moderate and conservative, what remains of the conservative Democratic base, which is not much, but they even though they had been fractured, they came back in response to, this warmongering posturing. They lost some of those traditional liberals, which still consider themselves liberals, and there was also some normal, I think, recovery because of COVID, right? And we know that from, look how bad his approval is on the economy. The coronavirus pandemic was still his best issue. Nevertheless, he was -5. That's better than the -11 from the prior month. I don't think he's ever going to get above water again on COVID, just like I don't think he'll ever get above water again, period. I think he's a president who's forever underwater, unless something dramatically changes. The trajectory of this economy in this country and the way people feel is a negative one that Joe Biden really, it's not within his power to fix. He's not competent, or his ideology itself, which is nothing. It's whatever, the warring factions of the White House, whoever gets their way today. It's not something he's really competent enough to fix. Nor, even if he was, would he really know what to do. The people around him are never going to do something that, let's say, Donald Trump would do, because they made a lot of these problems simply because they wanted to be the anti-Trump. So they put themselves in this position, and they did so all the while with this impossible promise of getting the pandemic under control looming over their heads. And once the country, again, once the country realized that that wasn't going to happen, that's when Joe Biden really began to lose grip. I won't know until we poll in April. And by the way, the April form is up. If you want to contribute to the public polling project in April, that's up. And we can start, going to that soon. In fact, there may be a morning show that wants to showcase it, which would be pretty cool, but I don't want to get ahead of myself on that. What I was really thinking and trying to do is that if we had last month a really big expansion of the contributor base. So if the more donors we have, the easier we can fund the survey, for multiple reasons. Obvious, some are very obvious, but the bottom line is it reduces the financial burden for the people who contribute month after month to the public polling project. And the more we have, the less that burden will be on the same people who keep giving, who we love, by the way, for supporting what we do. But again, I would strongly recommend there's more appetite for polling than there is the ability to fund these. So share it with your friends, pass it around. And if the more we can expand that base, the more we can actually poll and get into the field. That all being said, I suspect strongly that this was a minor arresting of his downward trend because of everything that was going on. State of the Union, be damned. I really don't think that had an impact. I do, however, think that, from the groups that seemed to kind of return a little bit to him, it was this temporary distraction away from inflation. But now that we are on the course that we are on, the course is set. It's time to, there's really nothing we can do to stop it, or nothing that anybody currently in power would do to stop it. I think that it's inevitable that we will return to the central conversation being inflation and cost of living, which it was still this month. Don't get me wrong. It's just that he got, for instance, where are you? Most important issues. Obviously, cost of living and inflation was number one, going away. Jobs in the economy was number two. Foreign policy crept up to number three, even though it was 9%. You had this modest rally around the flag. Not modest, I would say marginal. It's within the sampling era. He rose from 38 to 40. The sampling era is 2.1%. Theoretically, he could have been at 36 and it wouldn't have been that different. Plus or minus, remember? So that was a really good question. With us, that's what is happening. With everybody else, it's because the polls like YouGov, and really, you have to blame the economists and others who use their data because they're doing what they want to do with that data set. But it's the people who source that stuff through YouGov and other CNN, even Fox News. They choose to weight the poll to keep Biden's disapproval down. And how do you do that? If I would have given Democrats a 4-point advantage, then his disapproval would have come down to 49%. And in truth, we didn't do that because we don't wait raw for party ID like everybody else does, or at least a lot of the people that we're talking about. Not everyone else does, but a lot of the people. And then some people, some people that, we know and just have a disagreement over. Rasmussen, they wait for party ID. We do not. Right? If, generally speaking, region, gender, race, ethnicity, all of that comes in then, you should see something like this. You're not seeing that with those other polls. So they're artificially holding Biden's approval higher. And by the way, suppressing the rise of his disapproval. If your party affiliation is fluid, like ours is here, like is the unweighted raw result that you saw, you might notice that the party result did not change all of that much in our polling. So if we collected at, for instance, in December, right, of 21, last year, if we collected a Democrat 4.9, you're probably expect to see the overall party affiliation Democrat 3.0 or Democrat 3.5, right? Maybe 2 sometimes. Really depends on how much the Northeast sometimes is overrepresented. It's one of the main things that reduces Democrats' share of the overall sample in our polling. It's if the Northeast comes in just way too high. And you'll notice that, folks. Look, and if you open up the voter file right now or go to our year-end model that we put out on locals, if you're a local supporter, go check it out. You'll see what I mean. That the overall universe of 185 million vote records is only D+4. The Northeast is only about 17%. That's it. There are some states in the Northeast that vote at higher rates, so a likely voter model could change some of that representation. But some of these polls that we're talking about right now, you can open them up, look in, and you will see regional participation. They'll have the Northeast at around 25%, 26, 28 in NBC. The Northeast is the most economically depressed, consistently losing population. The South and the West are the growers. The Midwest under Donald Trump began to have a rebound. It's actually rather sad. We'll see which way it goes. But the Northeast, losing home prices, losing population, losing certain industries, they're depressed. The idea that they would represent 7, 8, 9 points more than their overall representation is ludicrous. But that's how you get to D+6 or D+9 in some of these polls. When you look at them, it's how could they possibly? And remember, it's not that they're oversampling, they're overrepresenting. That word is oversampling is used incorrectly all the time. This poll oversampled Democrats. No, it overrepresented Democrats. There's nothing wrong with oversampling. We oversample everyone, or we try to, because weighting down is better than weighting up. Your weighting efficiency will be higher if you weight down. If you collected 20% more of a subgroup that you needed, and you ultimately have to weight down for them, you're likely to be more accurate. You're not filling in any gaps of you're not trying to fill in gaps of knowledge that you don't have because you didn't collect it. When you weight down, it's like you're reducing the odds of being wrong. When you weight up, you're trying to fill in the gaps. All right, so that's why we try to oversample every group, because sometimes you do have to increase a certain group share in a survey. And that's okay if you adequately oversampled them. It's all right. It's not if you didn't sample enough and then you're trying to just, guess. All right. I mean, to put it in layman's, you're trying to guess. But that's how you get, again, to like the D+9, D+7 samples you see in these ridiculous Economist YouGov polls. Reuters, which is conducted by Ipsos. We showed you their record in 2020. It was abysmal. Look at it. I even color-coded it for everybody to see how crappy it was. They didn't call a single state correctly. Not a single one. Not within the margin of error, even. Sampling error, excuse me. I fall into that trap. And by the way, that's another reason, the problem I have with the Real Clear Politics average. That was a good idea when everyone generally surveyed the same way. We do not anymore. Some people are reporting margins of errors when they should be reporting confidence intervals because they're opt-in surveys. Some of them are mixed mode. You can't compare that to an online opt-in panel like Ipsos. And by the way, there should be no reason for that kind of ridiculous over-representing of certain groups when it comes to a panel. Advantages over panel responses. You can design the survey. Read the Public Polling Project PDF thing we put out. You can design a survey and set those quotas. Set sufficient, response numbers for certain targets. Or that's really what they are. Set targets. And have quotas. The Northeast should never go above that. Some ridiculous number like we are seeing. And if you do all of that correctly, then you don't have to touch party. And this is what you'll see. Changing from one month to the other. This is what Gallup does, by the way. They were the gold standard for a half a century. All right. That was a good question, though. And I could probably spend an hour answering it, frankly. But, I can speak more clearly to what is happening with our polling. With theirs, it is a conscious decision. That's something I want you guys to know and understand. It is a conscious decision. While I'm here, we didn't go for his job ratings all that much. Again, the economy, abysmal. 37.7 approve, 58.5 disapprove. The coronavirus pandemic, for those who didn't hear, 45.4 approve, 50.9 disapprove. Immigration and border security, 36.4% approve, 57.5% disapprove. On crime, 36.3% approve, And again, just huge numbers of disapproval here. You're looking at 58.3 disapprove. U.S.-China relations, 34.2 approve, 57.3 disapprove. So coronavirus is still his best issue, but it was horrible as well. It did tick up a little bit, which, Joe Biden's overall approval rating has been like married to his approval rating on COVID his entire presidency. He never received, with the exception of 1 month, folks, 1 month when he got fairly decent marks on the economy. 1 month. That's it. With the exception of that, Joe Biden never received high marks on all of the issues that we use to really track a president's approval. Foreign policy, immigration, the economy. He has been a very unpopular president. Told you in the beginning of presidency, he was a 48% starter from inauguration day. 48%. And they want you, when you're looking at those averages, they want you to think he's somehow clutching to the 40s, the low 40s. You might notice every time he threatens to fall into 30, somebody at CNN or another one of the repeat offenders comes in to rescue him with a 45, 47 outlier, which Bevin falls for every time, puts it in his average. And there it is. And I know it's not his job to call balls and strikes. Well, I'm not going to put that poll in this month because obviously it's an outlier. That's not his job. And I know that. My point is, choose who you put in your averages more wisely. Then your averages will do a better job. All right? Because they haven't. Let's get real. They haven't ironed out individual survey errors since like 2012. And even then, some of those pollsters were right for the complete wrong reasons. Obama won because of a higher share of black voters than was expected coming out to vote. Specifically black women, which is not what the poll suggested would happen. All right. All right, real quick before Joe comes on, let's stop sharing this one and bring on just a brief reminder of some of these issues that we have been bringing to people, because I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, ones that are related to school, okay? And I know this is risky, but it is what it is. It really doesn't matter which one I do first. Here's my back end of Everviz where we put in the results, but you guys have seen the crosstabs overall. Transgender students, this is nationally, okay? Transgender students, and actually we should give you the overall thing. Tell us whether you support or oppose the following, etc., etc. Transgender students participating on sports teams alongside the gender they identify with, such as biological males identifying as female joining a biological female soccer team, or vice versa. Across the board here, across the board. And this one is students competing against other students for scholarships, transgender athletes competing professionally. We just had to deal with a lot of those issues. And then ultimately, where I think we'd probably be the only pollsters that, again, have the fortitude to ask this question about ultimately where this stuff is headed, which is fighters. Right? So if you can't, and I'm going to ask Joe about that, actually, and I heard him just click on, but real quick before I bring this on, here's Virginia. Let's just do Virginia really quickly, because when we polled, obviously, Virginia had a major debate over the use of gender-neutral bathrooms, which we asked about as well. Is this the right one or is this the wrong one? Yeah, I got the right one. We asked it, we tweaked it. We asked several of the same questions we asked nationally, but then tweaked it to gender neutral bathrooms, which was specific to Loudoun County, the incidents in Loudoun County. And you would remember we called it the revenge of the fathers, where that if you were a male and you were a parent, you had a child who was under the age of 18 or one or more children that were under the age of 18, school aged, you had broken for Glenn Youngkin by an enormous margin. So my point is, it just doesn't seem, and Joe, if you're ready, I'm bringing you in. It just doesn't seem like they give a damn, and they just keep marching on. And I want to bring in Joe to talk about it right now. Joe, thanks for joining us on such short notice. Welcome to Inside the
Pleasure. I am always ready for you, Rich. Whatever you need, I'm here. I'm here. I live to serve. Okay.
I'm telling you, we need. And I'm going to take you up on that because, I was telling you this before. I'm not a lawyer, so you get all these questions about this, and really,
I need to be your legal insider.
You do, because I really wish everyone would stay in their lane sometimes. Like, I don't know the answer to these questions. I'll ask Joe for you, you know? So
my pleasure.
I'm glad you came on because this is what I get. Not only the questions about stuff like this, but what I also get is, how could they be allowed to do that? And the article that I sent you that somebody had asked me to talk about was the school nurse at Hartford Public School school systems. She's a school nurse, 77 years old, and she was fired by basically going to Facebook and outing what they had been doing, which was, a couple dozen students, or at least 12, that were on puberty suppressing drugs the school was giving to them. With the help of teachers and staff and, overall the school, with the exception of just 2 of those students, the parents didn't know anything about it.
Horrible.
And
horrible.
My question to you, Joe, is like, because you have Republicans talking about we're going to pass a parents' bill of rights. And people immediately ask me, well, why is that even needed? Is there really not, how could they get away with this? Can you answer that for us?
Well, you saw
how
that.
do they do this?
I mean, you could. Everyone's talking about the "Don't Say Gay" bill, which obviously is not the "Don't Say Gay" bill. It's the "Don't Groom Our Kids" bill. And they ask, like, and they focus on the discussions that you're allowed to have. They ignore a very critical point of that bill, which is that there's an obligation by the school to be upfront about what they are discussing with kids, and they can't just have these secret backdoor meetings with kids. And it's what you should ask yourself is the same question: why the hell would any state need to pass such a law? And the problem, the situation that you're dealing with when you're talking about education in general, there are certain areas that have been carved out specifically for the states, meaning when it comes to schooling, education, when it comes to health, when it comes to policing, those are 3 areas which have traditionally been the exclusive purview of state power versus federal power. So what that really entails is that the states have an opportunity to pass whatever regulations they feel are best suited to help their citizenry, however they define helping, which might not be the exact same as how a parent would define helping. So certainly in this context, when you're talking about what they would argue, what the state would argue is this is the health of the child, even though most parents would say you're crushing my child, destroying my child, or many parents at least would. And it's related to their education. So you can see how a state would sort of open up the doorway that they have the power and leverage to actually go round behind the parents' back and do what they want. Is that the same? Is this the same laws across the board if you're talking about Connecticut versus California versus Iowa versus Louisiana? No, it's going to vary from one state to another because these are areas that have been exclusively and should remain exclusively the domain of the states, not at all in the purview of the federal government.
That was going to be my next question. So if you are a Republican, okay, or traditional conservative anyway, how could you even argue for a parents' bill of rights? Aren't you like opening the door to something really wicked here? So you're using
I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
Right. So this is something that really does need to be fought. So Ron DeSantis is right here to take this fight at the level he's taking it.
100%. He is the king. People don't realize the power a governor is. You're the king of the state. You're literally like a king of that province. So, that's and there are certain areas which are exclusively the domain of the state. Now, don't get me wrong. The federal government does all they can to step in on even these areas, and the way they do it is by dangling a carrot. They'll be like, well, we want to promote that schools will be more open-minded about this, so we'll create an additional slush fund in this other area related to schooling. So since it's going to require more books for you to educate your kids about gender equality, so we will give you an extra $30 million a year towards books so that this way you'll be able to afford the books for gender equality. So they sort of use that and as like a prerequisite to get this grant that will
right.
that will sort of give that carrot out there rather than a stick. This is exactly what they did when it came to reducing the speed limit, the minimum drinking age, which is that when they wanted to up the minimum drinking age from 18 to 21, and they want to do it on a national level, and every state was looking at them like saying, "What are you kidding me? This is something that's." Every state gets to decide what the minimum drinking age is. So what the federal government did was they said, okay, well, you want money for your roads? We think that young kids driving on roads are bad for the roads and bad for that whole situation. We're only going to give grants, or we'll give increased grants for any state that has a minimum drinking age of 21. And if you're under that, in that case, we're not going to give you your money. And sure enough, every state in the country, 49 states, right away said, boom, we're in. The one holdout, you want to know who the one holdout was? The one holdout was Louisiana. Because they're like, dude, we got Mardi Gras. We can't afford to tell 18-year-olds that they can't drink until eventually even they caved. Even they ended up caving. But that's what the federal government does in order to stick their nose in areas that they're not supposed to be able to stick it. And that's because of Wickard v. Filburn, which is a case all the way back from the area of the New Deal, which basically gave them the ability to do that. It was one of the worst decisions in the history of the Supreme Court. So
one of the areas, though, okay, so that leaves, I mean, really, then that, especially when it comes to education, that leaves it up to, it really does then. I mean, you made a very clear argument. That leaves it up to the states. I watched the Senate debate the other day for the U.S. Senate race in Ohio. I wanted to rewatch it because I did watch it when it was the day it was out, but I wanted to go back and check out a few things. I think it was Monday. I rewatched it early in the morning, and everybody said that they needed, when it came to specifically the transgender issues, because, and then I want to follow this up with another question too. But when it came specifically to these transgender issues, I just said it, a biological male who now identifies as a female, deciding I want to compete on a girls' soccer team. Yeah. And, the fact that, I mean, really, you could be robbing a young girl of an athletic scholarship. You could be robbing an Olympic athlete of a gold medal. Really, what gets to Title IX issues, and every single one of them said, yes, there needed to be changes made to Title IX, with the exception of J.D. Vance, who also said it's more than that, because it's big tech who won't let you discuss it or talk about it, and they persecute you over it. So the minute you bring it up, the minute you try to argue a side that's supported by the majority, you're canceled and removed. So they also have to suffer too. So he was the only one who added that. But generally, what would be the implications if they made if they made this at least a Title IX issue? Is there any way that eventually that could backfire? Because you have a lot of hesitancy to use the federal government to address these issues.
So you're asking me if they use Title IX as a basis to try and allow schools to do hormone blockers? I mean, like,
no. I'm sorry, I jumped issues here. So to prohibit transitioned, you don't know.
Are you asking Title IX to compete in women's sports?
Yeah. So, like, if you could you use make changes to Title IX? If you did, what would be a risk? But could you make changes to Title IX ultimately to prohibit that from happening?
Well, if they made changes, you're asking whether the question is whether the current status of Title IX, if they can make whatever changes they want to,
right. Though you would need changes.
I mean, really, what you're asking, the question is whether or not someone that's considered a minority class, which has the ability to basically say we're being persecuted and not having opportunities to.
Yeah, I'm assuming they were already going to make that case, Joe.
Yeah,
I am.
Honestly, I haven't looked into that, but I know that with respect to employment, I remember them making changes with respect to that. So with respect to, I'd be surprised if that hasn't already come into effect. It's not an area of research. It's a little bit outside of my normal lane. But if it's not an area that's already open to them, I can't imagine it'll take very long for that to switch over.
That's why I just always figured the snowball effect.
I mean, I mean, we're at a stage right now. We have to recognize that the trans community is basically, there's no difference between the trans community, the regard that the government's going to have for the trans community than the gay community or minorities in general. They're going to be treated, if they're not already treated legally in every respect as a protected minority. That sure as hell is going to be coming.
It's going to happen
very quickly. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that start.
Is there a danger to, I guess, because the question here is the implications was the question, right, of these changes to
But there's
Title IX.
there's no answer to this. There's no answer to this problem, because what we're seeing here is the left is basically, you have two dominant fists which are colliding with each other. And from my perspective, I'm just like, I'll sit back and I'm like, you know what? I'm out of this. I'm out of this fight. It's basically, you have your hardcore you have your hardcore feminists against your hardcore trans activists. And basically the feminists are like, look, you guys are, we're happy recognizing you and all, but not to the extent that it's going to carve into our rights and what we've spent a century working to attain, and having women's sports and all these different elements, of things that we have recognition. And now all of a sudden, if you want to try and like compete with us, take jobs from women, take every trophy from women. I mean, there was a South Park episode where they were talking about the strong woman competition, which was predicting this years ago, because the writing was on the wall. It was so obvious.
Creepy how they do that, though.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that episode, but it's basically,
I do know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's basically this tremendously macho, huge, muscle-bound guy with a beard and the long hair. He's like, yeah, I just started transitioning 2 weeks ago, and I can't wait to kick some women. He's like, he's like, and they're like, good luck, everyone. He's like, no, luck is for dudes. We're women.
You guys should check it out. Because they, like the Simpsons show, had this like incredible ability to predict it. And you see something like that, you laugh at it, and you're like, that's so ridiculous. But the funny part about it is it's so ridiculously predictable that is good. And
will there be women's sport? Ask yourself, 10 years from now, will there be any women's sports at all? I mean, basically, women's sports. How can women compete against transgender males? How can they possibly
That's where I'm going with this, Joe. So here is the real, we're talking about a slippery slope argument basically before. Here is the real question here. Will there be any gender separation at all? Because when we ask these questions on polling, the national electorate, but also we asked in Virginia, because it was big in the Virginia governor's race. We also asked, do you support or oppose the following, right? Is it not true from a legal point of view, if you are saying that there is no way to prohibit a biological male who now identifies as a female from competing in different sports, whether it's at school or in the Olympics, right? Then eventually you have to come to grips that there is really no legal distinction between a transgender or a biological man who now identifies as a female deciding that I'm going to force Dana White to let me beat the crap out of a woman in the octagon. I'm going to force him to, because if Dana White says no, I'm going to sue him. And the new radical they just about to put on the Supreme Court is absolutely going to back me. Right. I mean, oh my God, Joe.
It's so
we're going to watch men beat the hell out of women, Joe. This is where this is going.
Yeah. Here's
Rome, buddy.
Here's the thing that's so ridiculous. When her qualifications, according to Biden, before he narrowed down, the qualifications was that this is a black woman. Well, how do I know it's a black woman if she doesn't know she's a woman? She doesn't know what defines her as being a woman. So what makes her more of a woman than you or me, Rich? If no one knows what a woman is, in that case, basically, I mean, the whole goal here is to obfuscate the entire concept of gender in general. But and if that's what the goal is, then in that case, there's no protections for women. This is what they didn't foresee. Fine. Why did we have all these different specialties for women? It's in order to give them their own niche. It's to give them their own lane, their own zone. That's like, this is how they can compete. This is why we have protections specifically for women. There's no protections for men. There's never protections for men because they never felt to be needing protections. Well, now, if you're completely erasing the concept of gender, in that case, all the protections that the feminists have worked for are gone because they are no longer different from you or me. We're ignoring the fact that they're women. So in that case, that's how the trans community is destroying feminism altogether, or the feminist, not feminism, but feminist movement altogether, because they're basically saying there is no difference between the genders, in which case there's no special protections for the genders, there's no special sports for women, there's no need. What are you arguing for women to get equal pay? It's like you're the same as a man. We're all the same. That's what happens when you opposite gender. It's the worst. It's the worst thing in the world, and yet ironically, the bitterest pill is for the feminists who are basically saying how they've been underprivileged or still, and need all these protections here in 2022. And I'll tell you this, I'm a big believer that feminism was a necessary thing going back a century, going back even to the 70s, the equal rights movement. And I said, okay, you know what? You guys won. You're all equal. You're completely equal. And it's like you're getting, and as it should be, it's fine. I want you to have equal opportunity. I want you to get equal pay. I want you to get everything, all factors considering equal. There's no reason, if I can hire someone, an employee, and pay them less, obviously because of their gender and they're equally talented, of course I would hire that person. But that doesn't happen because it would be illegal to pay them less. So all the arguments that they've been making, and I've been screaming, is like, this is just, you have nothing left to fight for. What do you win? What do you do?
Your mission is over.
Yeah, what do you do when you're killing yourself for a mission and you finally succeed and you won? Do you pack up and go away? No, you need to keep fighting. And this actually gives them something to fight for, but I don't know how they win this fight. I don't know how they can win this fight. This is too big an animal. The one thing that feminists couldn't beat was basically a woman with a penis.
Joe, I mean, I don't know what's worse, because like you, and I know this isn't popular in some of the crowds I run in, but I like you. I did see a need for that, just like I saw a need for an organization for labor in the beginning of those movements.
Yes.
But then it's just like an animal that gets out of control. And I'm looking back now, looking at where we're headed. I'm looking, you look back and you wonder which one was worse. So they went from hating being in flip-flops in the kitchen with a big belly, the subject to maybe like a husband's wrath that had too much to drink, to about to be subjected to state-sanctioned ass kickings by grown men. What the hell have we done? And there's no separation in the law for this, right, Joe? I mean, there's no way to draw a line, right, Joe? I mean, once you legally.
Here's what I think it is. There's actually a Jewish concept that if you have a bad character trait, in order to correct for that, you need to go the exact opposite extreme, and then ultimately you'll come to the middle.
To the middle, yeah.
That's an ancient Jewish concept, goes back several millennia. So when it comes to feminism, right? So there was terribleness that was happening that with the way women were treated, and basically, look, even in the 50s, they were treated like second-class citizens. I mean, everything was about their physical appearance, nothing about their capabilities. And many women out there are very, very capable, and no less capable than men in pretty much any regard other than physicality. So when they needed to have that correction. But part of what they did was they made it as if every woman now has to go get a job. You're only a real woman if you go out and get a successful career, when they should have made it about like, no, every woman should have freedom of choice. And some women are going to choose to be a stay-at-home mom, and we celebrate that also. One of the issues I had with feminist movement, going back 10 years ago, was you spit in the eye of a woman who says, you know what? I want to raise children. I want to have a family and serve as a mother and be able to raise my children, have a close relationship with them, and not go out into the working world. And they sort of made it as like, no, you can only do that if you have a career also. Otherwise, you're a lesser, they would mockingly say, oh, stay at home barefoot and pregnant, as if that's something that's a lesser choice. And that's not serving your own constituency, which is all women. Women should have fair opportunity to get any job in the world, whether it's CEO, Supreme Court Justice, President of the United States. They should have every fair opportunity as any man should have. At the same time, part of having that equal opportunity is they also have opportunity to say, you know what, I just want to be a parent. That's what I want to do. I just want to be a mom. And not have the people who are supposed to be looking out for my interests spit in my face and tell me that I'm a piece of crap, or I'm an insult to women. I'm an affront to women because I decide I don't want to get a career. That is doing a disservice to the people you're supposed to be serving. That means you're not really representing their interests. You have some other ideology. So if they would actually celebrate womanhood, celebrate what it actually means to be a woman. And part of that is having the choice to say, you know what, I'm not going to go for the traditional paying money career. Instead, my career is going to be as a mom, as taking care of my children and my family, and keeping the home, and that be proud of that. And if they would celebrate that, I think they would have had a lot more support. They would have a lot more support from men today, from your standard men who basically say, you know what, don't spit in my wife's eye because she wants to stay at home and raise and help, and be dedicated towards raising my family. Don't spit at them, make them feel like they're second-class citizens. You don't care about them. Stop acting as if like we're only successful when all 9 Supreme Court justices are women, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. As if that's what's really makes a lot of sense. That's a fair representation of everything. Just come back to where reality is. We're like, you know what? The best representation of the Supreme Court is when you have a balance. When you have a balance, it's probably going to be 5-4 one way or the other way. It may not be. It may be 7-2 one way or the other way, but not like our goal is to get to 9-0. That just means you don't care. You're not caring about justice. You're not caring about benefiting the world. You're just caring about an agenda.
Right. If it's 9-0 all the time, there's a problem, Joe. There's a problem.
I've been rambling here. I apologize for that.
I was just going to say, by the way, here, man, you put that perfect, because they also reduced the value, or really tried to eliminate the value of that traditional role that a woman has played. And I think now we have empirical evidence up the wazoo to show what a detriment that was to society. Because
terrible.
It's like terrible.
For both the kids and the mother. Terrible for the kids that grew up. And also, you know what? Women have a maternal instinct. That's why the traditional story, you could go back to sitcoms, to rom-coms from the 90s, from the 90s, where you have women in their 40s who are all bitter that they don't have kids, or late 30s, desperately trying to have children. Why? Why are they like that? It's reflective of what society was feeling, which is that, you know what? Most people, men and women, most people kind of have a yen towards having offspring. And if you're a woman, that you only have a certain window of opportunity to do that. So whatever paternal instinct you and I have, whatever maternal instinct a woman has, they know I got to start working on that by a certain age. And if I'm dedicating myself to my career, I'm really sacrificing something that's of critical importance to who I am as a person. And one of the things that the feminists didn't realize, and one of the stupidities that they had, is they didn't realize that whatever job you have, that's not defining you as a person.
As it's all you are, right?
Yeah. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm a lawyer." Yeah, I'm just a lawyer. Like you're an idiot if that's what you think you are. I'll tell people, because they want to know my career, I'm a lawyer. But like, you know what?
It's not who Joe is.
Right? Exactly. First and foremost, you know what I tell people when I'm being completely real with you, because I'm an Orthodox observing Jew. When someone asks me that, that's what I am. I'm a Jew. Second, I'm a dad and a husband. And third, you know what I do? Oh, for a living, I happen to be a lawyer who I create content on YouTube. That's basically, but that could change a year from now. I could be like, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to be doing a year from now. You didn't know what you would be doing this 3 years ago. So why would that define who you are as a person? That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. But that's what feminists think, that your career is who you are. And the much more important internal, innate hardwiring of us is, hey, I want to have offspring. I want to be part of a chain. I come from people. I want to pass my legacy down beyond who I am, so that who I am as a person exists many, many decades, if not centuries, beyond my time on this earth. So
that's wisdom right there, Joe. It is. It's funny you say this. I just had a conversation with a friend, a decades old friend. We grew up, I mean, maybe from high school on, became really tight. And she's had relationships, and it's almost like a vicious cycle. You change the woman's role in the society, you change the men's role, and women are still looking for that, like a real man. Yet they've had a hard time finding one. She is now. We just turned 40. I have 3 kids. I have a wife. She is 40 years old and lamenting she's never had a child, and it's now becoming a problem for her. I mean, and she's not alone. I know a lot of people like this. Just so happens that she's a closer friend. And she's, looking at my family life, and there's just no other way to put it. It's regret. Yeah, it's regret, and that is not a happy person.
It's tragic because they know that this is a permanent mistake, that they'll never be able to change the consequences.
She said, "I guess it's just not for me now. I guess it's too late and it's just not for me." And
Right.
it's like she doesn't really believe it wasn't for her. She's trying to make herself accept that
Yep.
she didn't prioritize
It's
that.
awful.
And she's got this career and that's great, but is it enough for her now when she's 40 years old looking back?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Not
And
at
there's
all.
a hole that she cannot fill at the office, Joe.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
That can't.
And
She can't. She won't be able to fill it anywhere. I mean, unless she met.
nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really sad because the way we find genuine happiness is by living in consonance with who we are as a person. When we try rejecting, we try changing what we wish reality to be for what reality is. That's the same thing as when you want to know why when you tell a lie, you feel that feeling of guilt because there's a lack of consistency.
Yeah, you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not being true to yourself. And that's the exact same thing when we try pretending that reality is this, when we all know in our heart of hearts reality is that. And when you're trying to pretend that like your job is the most important thing in the world, and ultimately the futility of that, and recognizing that this job is going to be forgotten, this company one day is going to close down, all of it is all going to end. It's all meaningless at the end of the day. And my family ultimately is something that lasts forever and will always be there.
Legacy.
Yeah, your legacy and you sacrifice that all together just so that you could say that, for 10 minutes or 20 years that you had this role in building something that ultimately became nothing. So it's a devastating thing, and it's all because of that lie that they're living their entire times, that the career defines who they are as a person. It's terrible.
And that's what she was told. I know we're coming up on the hour, but that's what she was told. When we were growing up, I was being told that I'm too much, I'm a chauvinist, I'm too macho. I gotta smooth myself out around the edges and accept different things. And she was being told that she doesn't have to be a mother. She should be, she should strive to be just as good as her friend Rich, and going on to a different career. That's fine. I don't. If that's for you, but it's not necessarily for everyone. And I don't know any of us who don't want both.
Right. There are very few humans on the planet who that's the right move for. There are some, there are a handful, but for the majority of well-adjusted individuals, the feeling, if you grow up in a home where you appreciate your family, which ideally every human should have that blessing, and unfortunately too few have. Unfortunately, far too few have. But if you grow up with that blessing, you want to share that blessing by starting a home of your own, which is similarly healthy. And to tell people that no, you're going to find greater happiness doing something different than what your innate yearning is telling you is natural and where you come from and where you want to go to. It's just you're destined to have the misery that your friend is describing. It's terrible. And how many countless millions of women are put in that situation?
She is not alone.
She is millions, not alone. Millions.
Yeah.
And you could lay that at the feet of the feminist movement. So if the trans movement ends up decimating the feminist movement, perhaps that's a good thing.
Here, Joe. You got to come back on. We got to do this again.
I gotta have you by me also. If you, you guys,
let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So
tell everybody where they can, follow along with what you're doing.
So basically, I stream every night. I recently gave a name to my shows. On my weekend, I fly a little bit more towards this type of conversation, and that's Saturday night and Sunday. These are like around 10:30 on Saturday and Sunday at PM, and go run for a couple hours where I live stream. And so I host a show on my channel. My channel is called Good Lawgic, and the name of my show on Saturday and Sunday is called Viewer Discretion. And then Monday through Thursday from 10 p.m. till midnight. So I host a show called The Following Program, also on Good Lawgic. So you can find me on Locals at Good Lawgic. You can find my YouTube channel, which is Good Lawgic. Everyone knows me as Good Lawgic. My dad knows me as Joe. But everyone else in social media certainly knows me as Good Lawgic, and I look forward to having discussions with you, because these type of frank discussions, I try to engage my audience. I try to talk to them, get their thoughts, and what I find from having these conversations is my position on things sometimes gets sculpted or refined and honed based on conversations that I have during the course of these things, and I feel as if I grow as a person by actually engaging my audience this way. So I welcome you to please join me as well.
Yeah, as it should, right? I mean,
Yeah,
as it should. That was always, part of Western values and debate and philosophy. We don't do that anymore, and
right.
we're like we're rigid in our initial beliefs.
Yes, yes.
We don't, we're
And
not able to really learn from
it's
them.
so stagnant. It's so stagnant. You should be having a constant strive for truth and greater truth and
Yeah,
deeper truth and reanalyzing everything you thought you knew and question certainly, finer points of it is like, really? Well, how does that apply here? And why would you think that? And how is that different from there? And that's a sort of, and I tried to
yeah.
approach that from a sociological, what I call a humanities perspective, and that's really that's why people really come back to me, is because they enjoy having those type of conversations, which you can't really find on a nightly basis like you do on my show. So
Without a doubt. We'll check everybody go and check it out. We're gonna have Joe back. That was just fantastic. That was great, man.
you're the best, my
I'll
brother.
let you. Yeah, all the best. We'll see you soon. All right.
All right, take care, my friend. Bye bye.
All right. Take it easy. All right. That was Joe Nierman, a.k.a. Good Logic. I think I tagged it correctly on Locals. So if you want to check out his Locals page, I encourage you to do so. But you can find his content on YouTube as well. That was fantastic segment, right? Because there is the law question. There are questions that have to do roughly with the law, but then there are more frank cultural aspects to this debate, and really we don't have them enough, and there's real world applications to the things that we're talking about here. And it's so funny that we got into that. Just the other night was having this conversation. Oh, you got how old are the kids now? 12, 10, 2, you're so blessed. I am not. Like, that's unhappiness. All because I'm telling you. And Laura, roughly the same age, I'm sure she'll tell you the same thing. They encouraged that. They encouraged her to do that. I was like the bad guy, right? I was the bad guy, the white male. Uh-oh. Because we lived in an area of the country where a lot of this stuff began to happen first. It was like encouraging girls to do this. Don't don't look at a man as like a partner, more like subjugate him. Put your career above love kind of stuff. And that, whatever. I mean, like Joe said, some people that may be good, that may be the right thing to do. But most of us are human beings, and that means something. And we need partnership. We need fellowship. We need family. Without these things, there are holes. Faith. Without these things, there are holes. And we struggle when there are these holes in ourselves and our souls. That's what they are. Holes in the soul. We try to find things that we can stuff in there to replace that. Number one, it never works. And number two, it's not healthy. It always tends to be something nuts. You get a bunch of kids, privileged white kids, right? Who have not a care in the world, running around in ski masks, beating up reporters. Because the reporter works for Fox News. He must be a Nazi pig. That's what they want to feel like they're part of something better. All the MS-13, Bloods, Crips. Talk to any of them? These are just kids. They start at least as kids who don't have something. They want to be part of something bigger. For women, I hate to tell you, you know what's going to fill that hole? Valium. Ha! Because you're going to end up depressed and with regret. That's sad, but it's actually really predictable if you understand human beings. We're social animals. And like Joe said, really the only true state of happiness is when you're being true to yourself. And I feel like these educators and this, I don't feel like it's the case. These educators and just culture in general, pop culture in general, is trying to make people make these decisions, these lifelong impactful decisions at an early age because we're still impressionable at these ages. So they're forcing these ridiculous beliefs that are irreversible, by the way. Cutting off your penis is irreversible. You may want to think past the age of 10 before you do that. And by the time it happens, it's too damn late. I mean, honestly, our generation, we may look back and say the worst we have are some women who never had a family or some men who never matured into manhood. The next generation may have people regretting 30, 40 years later, looking back. It's not that they didn't have kids. They cut off their penis and now they can't. That's progress, right? And again, there's no legal definition here. There's no legal way to separate. So this idea that I put that in that questionnaire is not some radical idea. It's the predictable end result of this. Mark my words. We continue down this path 5 years from now, maybe not even 5 years, but I give it 10 years tops. And somebody will sue Dana White because they're a biological man who's not allowed to get into an octagon to beat the hell out of a biological woman. Progress. Real progress. And they will be forced, even if they're not nutcases, like some of the Supreme Court and would be, or soon to be, court justices that are, getting a place on the bench. Even if they don't agree with people like that, from a law point of view, a legal point of view, they will be forced because there's no reason to separate that. They will fall under they're protected class. And Dana White will be just some macho, chauvinistic white male who wants to hold on to the past, hold on to tradition. What a bigot. He still thinks there's something wrong with transgender females beating up biological females. What a backward thinker. Mark my words. That will be the argument. And I'm going to get Don's take when we come back. All right, you're watching Inside the Numbers. Going to take a break. We're a little bit over here, but be back in about 2 minutes. Don't forget, folks, to check out the local sting for the book club, and the April form for the new public polling project is up. All right, giving you the Bowen Band for about 2 minutes. We'll be back. Inside the Numbers. Stay tuned.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Putting on the brakes. We got a lot to do today. All right. Killing that early. We got a lot to go through. A lot of really good questions. But before we get back to them, I got to ask his opinion. Bringing on my good friend every Friday, Don Smith, back to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, give him a round of applause. Don, thanks for coming back on, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
You heard, I know you heard the tail end, at least, of that conversation. You heard it right there. There is no legal way to stop this progression. So this idea that I'm being far-fetched or something and that this is the end result is not at all far-fetched. There will be no way if we allow this to go forward, which I think, I already engaged in that conversation, assuming that Title IX applies to them, so I already assuming it does. So there is no distinction. And somebody will absolutely sue Dana White. This is where this is heading, or somebody, right? Or the some boxing federation somewhere or something. And you'll have men who likely can't compete against other biological men transitioning and becoming transgender females and beating the snot out of a biological female. We regressed 2,000 years back to the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and not just in that way. I mean, it's in every way. Look at the we're like segregating now based on race, and I mean everything we're doing is progressive is regressive, like you just said. That's the way it is. But I've said this from the very beginning of this, when this first became an issue of you have transitioning people competing against women. Wait till it's about money. Now, right now, we're talking scholarships, so there's people losing scholarships and things like that. Wait till it's about money. Wait till it's on the tennis court or on the golf course in the professional.
Oh, that's coming. It's coming.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
The Olympics open the door. It's coming. There's how could you say no? We're putting the brakes on it now.
Right. Yeah. How can it be bad now? Oh, wait a minute. When there's money involved, now it's bad. I mean, where's the line on that? And the line is, it will be indistinguishable. You can't draw a line on it now. Yes. It's out of the bag, right? So when it's about money, it's going to be a whole nother story. You've seen you guys were talking, I think the biggest thing in the conversation that I got away from that, which was really cool, was a lot of the stuff is the states' rights things, right? So what the big push right now from the left is to get everything federalized, whether it's the elections, whether it's whatever it is. I mean, look what's going on here in Florida, right? So everybody's talking about this, the Don't Say Gay bill, which is not the Don't Say Gay bill.
That's not right, which Joe pointed out. That's a ridiculous criticism.
Yeah, it's a PR,
it's ludicrous
PR campaign. So let's call it the exact opposite of what it is. But they want to federalize everything because the problem that they have is when you have governors like Ron DeSantis, and you can directly compare him. Let's take the pandemic. You can compare Ron DeSantis to Gavin Newsom, and you can see that what they didn't work. I mean, there's no distinguishable numbers that showed that their lockdowns, their mandates, all these different things. But if everybody was federalized, it wouldn't be so visible, right? So here's Ron DeSantis. I want to thank the left for their Don't Say Gay, the big PR push. I want to thank the Ron Perlman for putting that video out. That was awesome. Because
he should keep doing that, running ads. I mean, keep
we should
putting those videos up.
We should be paying them. We should be paying them because this is excellent PR. You know what happened with that video? People went, wow, yeah, I'm going to find out more about this so they could add to the spewing of the hatred and all these kind of things. They go there. It's a 7-page bill. And they go, oh, wait a minute. Parental rights. Geez, that kind of sounds good. So they should be paying these guys for doing
the only thing I will say about that. The only thing I will say about that, Don, is I'm so sick of these celebrity little sniveling cowards. He's a Nazi pig. Don't say it. Meanwhile, there are real Nazis running around right now, and that idiot's probably got a Ukraine flag thing on his Twitter handle.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's the one thing that does get me. Quiet in the face of real fascism, pretending somebody who has something to say about, even if it was a Don't Say Gay, how the hell does that make that fascist? Are they aware that fascism is an economic and political definition? It has nothing to do with what you're talking about, idiots. Nazism, which was inherently about, race, you could say, of course, but inherently its own brand of fascism. So this, you fascist pig, he calls Ron DeSantis. That's not even what it's the complete other end of the spectrum, the ideological spectrum, you ignorant piece of garbage. But you know what? Keep it up. Like you said, I was tempted to quote tweet that video and say, do your party a favor and keep putting up videos like that. It does two things: makes people look at it and then realize how crazy they are. That's what it does.
Yep.
The numbers are so overwhelming in Ron DeSantis's favor. I mean, we've had now, what, 3-4 polls about it? They're overwhelming. And I'm not surprised given what we saw, Don. I mean, but the question remains, they keep doing this crap anyway because their plan is to just have these radicals like they're putting on the Supreme Court right now. All right. Just put these radicals on the court, and it doesn't really matter that 2-1, 3-1 Americans oppose this craziness. It doesn't even matter because they're just going to run it through. And that's it. Why? Because the Lindsey Grahams are too much of little cowards to stop what really matters. You know, it drives me a little bit crazy because it's almost like polling. It just doesn't matter in some instances, Don. Just they don't care what you think.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and that goes back to my point again to all the leftists who think they're in the club, right? They're not in the club.
Right.
You're not in the
You're
club.
not in the club. You're a fool. You're making
You're
a fool of yourself.
Yep.
You know,
they're going against their own. I mean, look at those. I remember those numbers you showed about like the trans sports thing. I remember all those. Those numbers were pretty overwhelming.
Definitive.
And they just keep pushing straight ahead. Look at all the people that are trying to defend this, the attacks on the parental rights bill here in Florida. Think about this. That's the hill you want to die on. That they should be teaching gender identity to kids K-3. That's the hill you're now willing to die on.
Right.
I mean, that's insane. How many people? Again, that video. I'd like to know actually how many people now know the facts because of that video and because of all this other stuff, the Mark Hamills and the Stephen Kings and all these, Hollywood folks that putting all this stuff out where they type gay. Tell us you haven't read the bill, but you only get to use one word. Oh, never mind, you just did. These people have no idea what's going on, but they're driving people to go find out the actual facts. So maybe people will be a little hesitant next time instead of just listening to Bette Midler or Cher. Or, well, if they said it must be true. I mean, it's incredibly stupid.
I want to go back to this because, I mean, it's already cost them elections. I don't care what people say it did. In Virginia. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people were focused on CRT and, that's whatever. It is what it is. And inflation was also a major concern for people. They had the grocery tax, all of that, right? Considering how close the election is, you can absolutely say it's definitive when you look and you see, yes, I have one or more school-age children under the age of 18. This is usually the female side of this is usually a 20-point or more Democratic group, and it tightened to 10 points. And then you have men who were 67 to 29. I wonder if that had anything to do with a man's daughter being raped in a gender-neutral bathroom.
Sure.
Of course it did.
Absolutely.
And honestly, you have some people on the conservative side who really say some really dumb stuff like, I don't know if, these new culture war issues are really going to be the winning issue for people. If you would have ran a normal campaign in Virginia, you would have lost. You would have lost. End of story, Don. I mean, those numbers are... They're not always like that. Just so people understand, men in Virginia who have even parental men do not vote that Republican in the state of Virginia. They don't. So that happened because of this, because of these questions, because of what happened in Loudoun County.
Yep. And I remember people asking, I think they asked both of us, I think at one point, if this was just an outlier or was it an indicator of what was going to happen in the midterms. That really all depends on the messaging, right? So if the left could have tried to clean this up, they could have done some things, but they didn't. Now, in fact, they're doubling down because that's what they do. They push harder. So it may have been an outlier, but it won't be now because it's what happened in Virginia. Look where we've come from there till now, especially with, again, what's going on here in Florida. That just pushes the issue even further. And the people are going to speak out. The people are going to they are creating voter enthusiasm for the right.
Is Florida even competitive this cycle? No. I mean, it was obviously leaning to likely Republican anyway. I mean, obviously. But because Ron DeSantis chose to defend these girls, because he chose now to engage in this fight as well as all the Fauciism stuff, because he did that, this state is not competitive at all. He's going to clobber Krispy Kreme. He's going to clobber him to the point. This will be the most embarrassing defeat of his career. And Val Demings doesn't have a prayer in hell. I mean, this is just a freaking joke at this point. This was one of the states that was one of the tightest, razor-thin margin states every election. It is not going to be from this point on. By the way, it just updated. Republicans now lead in registration by over 100,000.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, it's the first time that ever happened.
And we got a ways to go.
And we got time. All right. Because, and I can't imagine why the Biden administration will leave the border with Mexico wide open, but they're willing to park the military off the coast of Florida to keep Cubans and Venezuelans out. I can't imagine. I can't imagine the inconsistent message there, Don, what that has to do with.
This is the key to DeSantis, and people need to understand this. Why has he gotten to this elevation, this elevated point in being a candidate? I'm talking like on a national basis. I'm not just talking Florida. First of all, he's a good messenger. I've always said that. Incredible. I think he does a really good job he stands up and he fights for the things he believes in. Messaging is super important. That no doubt about that. One thing is more important that will make you stand out and take you to that next level, and that's action. This guy takes action. He doesn't come out and go, I'm going to repeal and replace, and just run around blathering some slogan. He actually puts, bam, he slaps the bill down on you. Here you go. And then he defends it with great messaging. So this is a guy who does things. There's action behind his words and then words behind his actions. And that's a unique thing in politics. Most people just go around. How many of the Republicans did we hear repeal and replace from? Oh my God. And how many times did we hear it? There was no plan. There was no nothing. This guy says something and then bam, smacks you with the bill. Here you go. What do you got a problem with that? So
he apparently wasn't joking on redistricting either.
Apparently not.
He crumpled that puppy up, threw it right back in their face, man.
He did.
He's like, Democrats should have one seat in this state. That's it. And honestly, he's right at this point because Miami he's going to carry Miami-Dade.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just say this right now? He's going to carry Miami-Dade. Ladies and gentlemen, mark my words. It's gone. It's gone. Donald Trump was this close, and he has done everything that he needed to do to draw what Don is talking about, is drawing a line in the sand and saying, we stand here. They stand here. The Democrats are very good because they have the media to help them. They're very good at making them seem not what they are. And we poll these issues. We poll voter ID issues, Don, all sorts of, the pandemic stuff. And it's amazing because there are so many voters who don't seem to understand it all. It's very clear. They don't know that Democrats oppose doing this of voter ID. They don't know Democrats don't want secure elections. They don't know Democrats want your daughter to be changing in locker rooms with men. All right. They don't understand it. Ron DeSantis is that kind of guy who will make you understand it. And once that happens, you just have those Hispanics in South Florida who are just like, oh no. Not my daughter. Not my daughter, right, Laura? You want to jump in and enlighten everyone how Florida Hispanics feel about issues like that? Right? Go tell your abuela that her niece is going in a locker room with a man with a dong.
I can personally say that, yes, you can say that, but whether or not the child will be completely put together the way that child walked in after your child, not so much.
Exactly, because that's when they start taking stuff into their own hands. Exactly. Yep. Thank you for that, Laura. Appreciate that. So I got a great question here, and I've been waiting for you to ask it because it was based on what we had said in a prior Q&A. All right. Question for Q&A for Don and Rich. Don and Rich have argued against using a laptop for impeachment since it would look like an attack on Hunter. With the public becoming more aware that it's tied in with Joe's corruption, have you changed your mind? We'll start with that. There's two parts to this question, but let's start with that. What do you think about that, Don? Are we there yet?
No. Okay. So that's a great question.
It is.
What I'm saying, what I was saying, what my position was then and is now was don't go after Hunter. Don't make it about Hunter. This is about the big guy. This is
Yeah.
about his
Yeah.
dad. So absolutely take that information, but make it directed at Joe Biden, not at Hunter Biden. Everybody knows the guy's a dirtbag. They're all going to cover up for him. And if you do that, it's this emotional thing and everybody will want to protect. Oh, they're picking on his kid and da-da-da. And
Yeah.
they'll start talking.
Yeah.
He'll get up there and he'll blather about Bo 5,000 more times and make it about the big guy because it's all there. All the information's there.
It's
So,
well, that's the difference now.
yeah.
And
So
now
that-
even the New York Times even admitted,
Correct.
yeah, we lied to you. You know, and the second part of the question is Trump said Biden is turning the U.S. into a third world country. Oh, I thought this was a question, but he's just saying congratulate Rince. He was the first to make this argument. And yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's about time Donald Trump started to use that rhetoric. I think it's a long past due. And by the way, as Don will tell you as well, that information was there before. The difference with this is that now the media has conceded they lied to the American public about it. So now there wouldn't be this protection. I think, Don, looking at some of these numbers against Donald Trump, Joe Biden against Donald Trump, okay, I'm starting to feel, and not starting to, I always felt that they would, cast off his ship the moment they had an opportunity. So in the next public polling project that we want to do for April, which people, again, should go check out, the links in the description, go ahead and contribute and leave us a comment on what you'd like to see us poll. But I think it's time to add a whole bunch of other Democratic candidates to pit up against him because we have in the past asked about Pete Buttigieg, right? Kamala Harris, for instance, but never in the same thing. And I think we should start because I don't think Biden's going to make it, buddy. If this keeps up, and the Republicans do go after Biden, they will cut him loose in a heartbeat. Because I'm looking at these numbers. I know they're looking at real numbers too, not the fake media and university polls. He can't beat Donald Trump. It's not possible. It's over. You can't recoup that kind of loss. There's a net on the low end, a net swing of 6.5 million voters. If you do the numbers based on our polling, on the low end, it's a net swing of 6.5 million who voted for Joe Biden, who now tell us they would vote for Donald Trump. Net. All right. On the high end, it's 9.5, 10. That's crazy. He can't win. He can't change minds like that. He's done something irreparably damaged his standing in the electorate against Donald Trump, because now it's this like comparison thing, right? Like Joe was able to lie about his record before as senator. Now he can't lie about his record as president. It's a very simple comparison. Were you doing better under Donald Trump than you are under Joe Biden? Is the country stronger under Joe Biden than it was under Donald Trump? There's just too many people who can connect those dots without allowing their blind hatred and ideology to get in the way. It's still against Harris. He did even better against her than he was doing against Biden. So I would like to ask this all the time to see if there's one Democratic candidate potentially. Maybe we'll add Elizabeth Warren to that. I don't know. What other people do you think we should pit up against him, Don? You got any suggestions for that? Because they don't have a bench, my friend. Right. They don't have a bench. If you can't use your sitting president.
Yep. What about Bernie Sanders? I mean, he's not going away, and he's going to run again. I mean, he's going to run forever, just like
Hillary, yes, our buddy, bend over Bernie.
Bend over Bernie, absolutely. That guy's a beaut. But yeah, what's really strange that we're watching here now is typically when a president gets less popular, the numbers start going down. They usually have a vice president that can kind of buoy those numbers, right? The vice president is usually higher up because they're not considered they're not as responsible according to the American people, right? So their numbers are a little bit higher, but look at her numbers. I mean, they're just absolutely horrible. This is going to be a bloodbath. What's going on right now on the left is they've given up on Biden already. They've written that off. But the problem is it's still going to impact all of those people running, whether you're running for Senate, whether you're running for House. It's still going to have an impact on all of those elections. So that's what they're trying to figure out now is how do we just survive?
What do we do?
What do we do? So I think what we're going to see going forward, and it's going to start soon, is going to be, well, it's kind of already started, the AOC stuff where she's coming out going, yeah, the young people, they're just not behind this guy. You're going to see people throwing him under the bus. This guy does not like to be thrown under the bus. He is not a nice man, never has been, never will be, and he is going to lash out at these people. So in this case, we really just, they're doing a great job of destroying themselves. They're doing a great job of doing PR for the right, especially ask Ron DeSantis. So this is one of those situations where you kind of want to just step back and go ahead. I got my popcorn.
That what are we going to do question. It's interesting, leading to some this week. I think it was in Politico, but this week leading to Democratic pollsters coming out and saying, stop talking about inflation. Talk about the transgender stuff instead. Talk about all of this stuff. So think about the kind of place they see themselves in, folks, when they're saying talk about this instead of inflation, because I understand that. I know it's funny, but I understand that viewpoint anyway, Don, because inflation is toxic. It's the worst thing a Democrat can talk about right now. When Democrats have lost the argument over cost of living, they have nothing. Because that was always their linchpin, right? So we care about the little guy, right? They lost that now. So now here are Democratic, strategists and pollsters advising them to talk about something else that's deeply unpopular because of how badly we fare when it comes to the inflation debate. So if do anything, take your attention off the inflation debate, which is why, again, I still think it's absolutely possible we can get some kind of escalation in Russia. It really depends how close Russia gets to taking some areas where they would then have their hands on certain documents. And then, I don't know. And so it's at that point, Don, then it may be worth it to them, but I will say this just to answer Dreary Spider before I kick it to Don. Ken Joe Mann should get reelected in 24, considering this Jackson approval vote and 2 Trump impeachments. He's not running in 24. He's going to run. From what I have heard from people that are in the know, he wants his governor job back. So he may run again for the governor of Virginia, which would be interesting because I do know Donnie made some enemies there at the state level. But, the people tended to like him. I don't know. We'll see. So I haven't seen a legitimate poll in West Virginia in a while, buddy. I mean, he seemed to. Trump didn't really go after him hard in 18. He didn't. I mean, did he rally? Yeah, but he didn't really go hard on it. So I don't know. What do you think?
He certainly remains very popular in West Virginia.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
He is one of the last, if not the last, blue dog Democrat. So he's able to cover everything, right? So he can give you the conservative stuff when it comes to the money, but then he can also appease the liberal side of things, where socially liberal kind of stuff. And so, those people are mostly gone. And I want to thank Barack Obama for that, for getting rid of the blue dog Democrats, because those would be the kind of candidates that could win in this midterm if they were a blue dog, because they kind of straddle it and they'll go against their, this party, and then they'll go against the other party. That's kind of what people want to see right now. Leadership. It's kind of considered a leadership quality. So he remains very popular. I think he could have a shot at winning the governorship if he does. If he decides to run for re-election in the Senate, I don't know who they would put up to beat him.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I think there's a lot more richer targets there. But if I don't think he will, because I do know some like whatever you want to call them, powerful families over there, and he seemed to indicate to them that he wanted his job as governor back. And he asked them if they would support him. So that's a serious conversation. I'll just make mention of this, even though I don't give a rat's what about Will Smith. There's just a report that says LAPD really was willing to arrest him on the spot, and the guy, the head of the Oscars, said that they did in fact talk to him. And I do just want to say this, Chris Rock, you have an enormous amount of composure, and you handled yourself like a gentleman. Will Smith is clearly a world-class piece of shit. And, if it was me, you're lucky, Will. You're lucky. You pick on weaker people because you're clearly a weaker man. But if it was you or I, Don, we'd be in jail because the state would have picked up those charges. The state would have arrested us.
Yep.
I just want to say, I don't think Chris Rock was a weaker person. Chris Rock was a Smart.
No, I mean like Will Smith viewed him to be like
Oh
physically
yes,
weaker.
he viewed them, but
So
I don't
yeah.
view Chris as.
No, I
weak.
think
I
Chris,
just
I got no, I'm yeah. Let me. I'm glad
Mhm.
you cleaned that up a little bit.
Thank
What
you.
what I mean is that he viewed him as a physically weaker person, like someone he could easily pick on. And Chris Rock obviously showed himself to be the bigger man in it all because he's a
Because
better
that's
man
how
than he's
men
a
are
better
supposed to
Christian than
act,
me,
not
Laura.
like
I would have
children.
hooked off on that SOB right in front of everybody. You're getting dropped, Will. Boom. Good night. Good night, sweet prince. Fresh prince. Night. I don't care how many steroids you stick in your ass. You're still going to be the scrawny little Fresh Prince from nowhere.
Stop your cursing.
Get him,
Anyway,
Laura.
you know what? I'll give you I'll give you a couple seconds on that. I mean, Don. Then he goes up there. What really irked me too is then he goes up there telling about what God called him to do, to defend the defenseless. You believe these people? This is the problem with the media and entertainment industry, Don. Their job is to be fake. You know what I'm saying? Their job is to be fake and to act. And Will Smith went up there and put on a performance. That's it. And by the way, Denzel told me. Denzel is a Christian. You see Denzel's face when he cited him?
Yes.
He was Christians don't smack people, Will, in front of everybody.
Yep.
You got CUCKED in front of the whole world, and you tried to make yourself look like a bad man. So apparently men can sleep with your wife. They just can't joke about her. Huh, Will? I'm saying it.
Yep.
It's disgusting because this is the problem with manhood in today's America, Don. This is the problem. And then he plays the victim card. I thought you were the tough guy, bro, that open hand slaps people in front of a national audience. And then you get up there and cry and play the victim. Freaking kidding me, Don?
Yep.
This is the problem with manhood in America. Manhood itself is endangered in this country.
Yep.
I'll kick it to you, then we'll move on.
To me, I'm just gonna take it from this angle. The worst thing about this is it really shows what's going on in our society right now when it's this controlling the narrative thing. This is supposed to be progress, everyone. This is what these people promised. It's gonna be progress. We're making progress. Like I said, we started out this talking about the regression because that's exactly what it is. We're going back to segregation and we're going to craziness. But look what happened after this. You had a black man go up, slap another black man because he made a joke about his black wife. And what did this become about? White supremacy. And you're just like, what? So it turned into this. Well, if it was, what about Mel Gibson? What about
did this happen?
Oh my God. I mean, just all over social media, this thing instantly turned into this racial thing, this racial component. And then it just goes in a completely different direction. And so I thought that was the really sad part about all this stuff is it had nothing to do with this. This isn't, you got all these people writing articles, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, which I always go to him for, advice on anything, but you get him writing a thing saying, well, he's concerned that this will be about the stereotypical actions of black men. And you think that. Don't project that onto everybody else.
Yeah.
Those are your thoughts. And that's sad that you think that is your life. That is how your life evolves as you see everything. About everything is skin color to some of these folks. And I think that was the worst thing about all of it.
Yeah, I totally agree because it's like one of those moments where it just shows how it's indicative of the rot in our society on so many different levels. And 50 years ago, that would not have ever have happened. And it really is just a sign of the decline, my friend. It's a sign of the decline, and the fact there were people even defending that. Two commentators, one on MSNBC and one on CNN, actually blamed Donald Trump. This is because we normalized Trumpism. What the hell are you talking? And Laura was like, when did Donald Trump open hand slap someone in public?
Never. Exactly. Yeah. I saw Howard Stern saying the same thing.
That's right. Howard Stern did too. You're right. Yeah.
And I saw some others too. And they made one of the characters was Trump. And then it's like, folks, get over it. TDS is a very real thing. And these people, man, the quality of life these people are going to have for the rest of their lives is going to be really sad and pathetic for them. But
yeah, we were talking about actually the Gallup index, 13-month low. And I had a chuckle, you know, like, well, gee, I wonder what happened 13 months ago. And that's with every single institution, media organization, constant day after day on this guy. Constant nonsense, fakeness after fakeness after fakeness, all to rock the boat and give people a feeling of unsettledness, right? That things aren't steady, things aren't being governed by a steady hand, and everything's out of control. They were trying to project a feeling of things being out of control, and yet still somehow people were happier. More people were thriving. That this, you know, called, you know, basically self-reported to be thriving, even with their regime being coddled by media and entertainment that people are subjected to every day. They still feel like this thing is spiraling out of control.
But okay, yeah, and this is the thing. They're doing this to themselves. They have such thin skin right now. You can't even ask Biden a legitimate question as a legitimate reporter because he gets angry. You guys keep talking about this. No, you guys are talking about it. This is a legitimate question. Look at the Ducey exchange.
Yes, I was just going to bring that
none
up.
of those three things happened. But did you see him? So Ducey's going to ask the question. He goes, "Oh, this should be good," and he's sitting there chuckling while he's at. Think about this. For 4 years, we were told about how important it was to be presidential. Here you got Chucklehead up there mocking a reporter. This should be good, and then lying to him. And where's the fact checks on that? I missed all the fact checkers saying, "Oh, actually, all those three things did happen."
Useless now. He's useless now. And PolitiFact, the lot of them. You know, when Peter Ducey asked him, what would you do if Russia, you know, this is your red line. What would you do if Russia did engage in a chemical attack? And he said, I'm not telling you, right? The whole White House press corps looked at Peter Ducey like, how dare you ask that question? But when Donald Trump would say, I'm not outlining my battle plan for you, because then we're going to compromise our element of surprise. And we don't want the enemy to know what kind of response will come from the U.S. if they do A, B, or C. That was outrageous and unacceptable. How dare the president not tell the media what his plans were? Remember? Now, Peter Ducey asked, and the entire White House press corps is aghast. But I'm appalled that he would ask something like that. It's completely different standard.
We don't, not that we need the proof, but if we ever needed proof that there is no journalism left, that media is completely dead, that was it. Because any real journalist in that room would have, when it went to them, they would have said, actually, I'd like you to answer Peter Ducey's question because I'd like to know that too. Because they should really want to know that. The American people really want to know that. What he said was, why should I tell Fox News? Oh, I don't know, because because our ideology is half the country. Maybe that's a good enough reason, huh? Maybe because you guys are in the tank. Have you noticed how many of these people now? Think about this. Look at all the people that are going on Fox News now from the administration, right? You got you got Kirby going on there now. That's the last thing in the world they want to do because it legitimizes Fox News, and they don't want to do it. They hate these people, but they have to because they're in such bad shape on every single issue that they got to start reaching out to Fox News people, hoping they can drum up some votes.
And it's also just pure viewership. Tucker Carlson, his subscription service is thriving. Brian Stelter didn't last a day. They didn't last it. I don't even know why Brian Stelter offered that, as if he could compete with people like us. Like, you don't have a product people want. You're forced on them. You're forced on them. Didn't they do market research first on to see if whether or not he had a brand that would actually make a subscription? And then what he'll do is spend the rest of his time attacking people like Glenn Greenwald and others who do, right? So Brian Stelter could never create a Substack page and survive. He could never do that. You know, so he hates these people who can. Locals, people like us, can't stand it. Can't stand it. And he tries to mirror Tucker, and look at him.
What was was that Air America, right? Wasn't that the big thing
That
they
was the
did?
other,
Where, I
yeah,
mean, where they were financed like with huge money,
huge amount of money.
and
Yep.
and they didn't last what, a couple months because nobody would listen.
That was
Remember?
to take out Rush.
Did you
That
see
was
the
to be an
yeah
opponent about Rush.
when Alec Baldwin had his
He
show and
crushed
he's like, "All right, I'm still waiting for people to call in. The number is number is again. Still waiting for somebody to call. Even his mom wouldn't call.
Somebody.
Even his mom didn't call in for crying out loud. She
Folks,
wasn't
if you
even.
don't-
She was listening to Rush.
Folks, if you don't remember that, if you weren't, maybe you're not old enough to remember that, you
Oh,
have
God.
got to check it out. I mean, it was just dead air. Nobody, what they were trying to do was have influence in talk radio and these kind of personality shows that the right was very successful in doing. And of course, the king was Rush Limbaugh. So they really did create Air America to go after Rush Limbaugh, try to take away his dominance on the radio. And they completely failed. If they didn't have the money, the seed money they did, they wouldn't even have made it a couple of months. They were hoping eventually this would take off. It did not. There was no phone line. Like C-SPAN had more phone traffic than these people. And they actually, that's not even fair to C-SPAN because they do have an audience. They do have a core audience and user engagement. They had nothing. And they propped it up. They got so much favorable media coverage leading up to the launch. You thought it was going to be the next best
It's going to be
thing.
amazing. It's going to be amazing. But there's another
Crashed
element that's important to talk about with the
Air
Air
America
America
crashed
thing.
and burned.
There's another element that's important to talk about when it comes to this though too, because you want to talk about collusion between the media and the leftists.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
what did they start doing? So Air America do the big thing. They're leading up to it. This is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread.
the
You're
phone
going
line's
to
still
love
open.
it. I'll give you the number again. Mom, are you out there? But but okay, just like the Jussie Smollett thing, which was, as you correctly point out, was tied to the anti-lynching. Okay, when Air America, when they did that big thing, what was it tied to? The Fair Use Act.
Yeah.
So this was where they were going to come in and they were going to start regulating and saying, well, if you've got Rush Limbaugh on for 3 hours, then you're going to have Alec Baldwin on for 3 hours. And this was when they started pushing all of that stuff because they did everything they could to shut down conservative media because nobody listens to leftist media, or at least on the radio they don't, but even look at the TV numbers as well. So that was a coordinated attack, no different than the Jussie Smollett thing was.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was another example of them not even wanting to be on an equal playing field. They always argue that it was about equality and time and airtime, right? It wasn't. It was about rigging it to give them an advantage. And they tried because Rush didn't have the media promoting them for free. Rush didn't have government regulators. In fact, they came after him. They didn't have government regulators rooting for them and doing everything in their power to keep them on the air. That it's just the complete opposite was true. And yet the free market dealt with them. And they hate the free market. The free market.
What they were trying to do was
a competitive edge.
They were trying to cut in half the effectiveness of conservative radio. So if you've got a conservative radio station that's 24 hours a day conservative, this way they could at least cut it in half and you could only play 12 hours of conservative. And then you'd have to have 12 hours liberal. They didn't care, I don't think, really if anybody listened or not, or they were just wanted to take away from what the right had.
Yeah, and for people who sing it, by the way, yeah, it's a big deal. Just so everybody knows, yeah, he still is the king. He still is the king. David, excuse me. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by text. Somebody had said in the chat, Rush still, and he is. Rush still is the king, and I told you, he's irreplaceable. That loss was monumental to conservatism in general and the new direction that the Republican Party was going in. Because, look, whether you agreed with everything Rush Limbaugh said or not, what always struck me about Rush was his ability to predict the game plan. It's like he had seen it all, Don, and he knew their true self. So when he would come out and say something that would be controversial, they're going to do this, they're going to say that, This is the plan here. And people would always, these squishy Republicans and their, media personalities. He'd always be out in not left field, right field, saying this is how the drive-by is going to play this one. And it would sound crazy to them. They would push it as like a crazy notion, and he would inevitably be born. That is why I respected the man more than anything. He was experienced, like street smart with politics. I don't know how to explain it, but he would know, Don, he would know. And then, by the way, you have to be able to do that to know the right move to make.
Right.
If you can't do that, if you don't see the punches that are coming, how do you know which way to bob your head and counter? Right? You don't, which is why Republicans are always reacting like the Ali Frazier fight in the last 30 seconds. Republicans are always Frazier, just the hands up on the ropes, not knowing where the hell the next thing is coming from. And if you can do what Rush was able to do, then that means you know how to react before they do, and you know the right move to make, and you can stay on the offense. And that is why they hated this man's guts, because he was so good. He would tell you what everything was about before it played out. And then inevitably it would play out, and he was right. So whether I agreed with everything he would say or not was always kind of irrelevant to me. It was always a matter of, I'm like really, almost in awe on how this man was able to do that. And I noticed that from a young age in politics, probably 17, 18 years old. I'm like, this guy's got a gift. He must really like know the true nature of his opponent. He's like Sun Tzu of politics. He really is. And by the way, toward the end of his life and his career, what was he doing, Don? After Donald Trump, in the post-Trump transition, was he regressing? Leading up to the election, it was, looking like obviously there could be a problem for Donald Trump. Was he regressing away from Trumpism? Did he abandon ship and say, this is looking bad for us? He didn't do it in 2016. He sure as hell didn't do it in the last year of his life. So what does that tell you? For all of these other fools who are always wrong and have been trying to replace him on the radio for years, right? All those typical Republicans. I'm not going to go through their names. You all know who I'm talking about, right? They were never as successful as him, and they were never as smart as him. So why on earth would you think listening to them now is the right move?
Yep. Rush was a trapper. So what I mean by that was he could set traps for them that nobody else could have probably got away with, right? So he would set a trap. That trap would lead to them exposing what their real plan was, which ultimately at the end of the day, like you said, would play out. And it would be exactly what he said it was. And they would fall for the trap every time. The trap is this. I talked earlier about that Ron Perlman video, right? How many people found out what's in that bill because of what he said, and they went, yeah, this is, I want to, and they wanted to add on and spew more hate out, and then they read it and they go, oh, wait a minute, yeah, okay, yeah, parental rights, that kind of sounds good, okay. With Rush, he would pull them into this trap. The trap was they would all start talking about it, and they would say the most awful things. He was a racist. He was a blah, 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 blah. How many people tuned into Rush Limbaugh just to see if he really was a racist? Because if you listen to the stories, read the stories, you saw the stuff on TV, you thought, man, this guy just sits here and spews racism all day long. Then you sit there and you listen to him and you go, this guy kind of makes sense. I didn't hear anything racist. And I'm gonna listen tomorrow to see if he does it again. That's if he does do some racism then, and he never would. So he would pull people into his audience that would become ditto heads. And maybe not all of them were even conservative, but they would go, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree with this guy. So he was just so awesome at that, to draw them in. Because he was enemy number one. That's who they wanted to take out. So they would put all their resources into going after him and shutting him down. And it grew him. It grew his business. It grew his listenership. It grew his people being knowledgeable. I mean, he educated a lot. He is one of the biggest educators, number one educators in the history of this country.
I'll tell you, I actually do have to disclose this. The first time I ever did listen to him, I was working for this guy while going to college who had a coffee import-export company. and he was your very typical yuppie liberal from New Jersey,
Mhm.
and he hated him. And I never really listened to him all that much. I was just like trying to weigh the typical debates that were going on. There was an election, it was a presidential election year. And then I'm not going to date myself, but it was my first one. And I was like listening back and forth to the different debates, trying to make my decision, like a new voter should do their due diligence in figuring out who they're going to vote for. And this guy hated Rush, and he just trash talked the hell out of him. So he made me listen to Rush. I was like, is this guy
Right.
really like this guy? You know, and I thought my dad listened to him when Rush was on air during the Clinton administration. I thought my dad watched his show. Remember, he had like a TV show at one point. Yeah. And I thought my dad used to watch it with his friend Joy during the day when they would talk business, because they were business relationships. And I'm like, I don't remember there being like overtly racist and hateful stuff, you know, like ridiculously conspiracy theories, which is how the boss always tried to portray him. And I listened to it, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not at all what I expected. And it actually made me think and ask, like, Andrew, did you ever actually listen to Rush Limbaugh? Did you ever, have you ever listened to the show? So I brought him a little radio, put it in the office, and turned it on. You know, and I was like, just listen to it. I would like you to point out to me what you're talking about, because I'm not really hearing it. I'm just not seeing it, man.
Right.
You know, I'm just not. And all through college, all my professors, of course, couldn't stand him, you know, so I would like, you know, and which is like the kind of rebellious guy I was. I would always like kind of like have it playing, you know, crowd, like waiting for the professor to come in. I'd be one of the first ones in like in the assembly row, just kind of listening to it, jotting my notes, you know, because back then you didn't have to worry about getting a bad grade because you didn't agree with somebody. That didn't happen back then. You know, but yeah, I remember one of the first things too, Don, wasn't over an NAAC, that NAAC attack ad. That was one of the first things that he was talking about, that they had tried to recycle about Republicans and somebody who was drugged behind a truck years ago and killed for being black, or at least so they said. And it just turned out that it was the most horribly, it was not a matter of dishonesty. You know, like you're blaming a politician for something private people did, right? And it was over hate laws. You guys may or may not remember this, but generally they wanted George W. Bush at that time to sign hate law legislation in Texas because that had happened. And it didn't really become a big story until he did not sign it. He refused to, because he said his position was, we don't need these laws because we already have laws that convict people for crimes like this. It's called murder, right? And I'm not cutting out a special instance in the law for something that's based on a racial hate crime, if you even think it is, whether you could prove that or not. I'm not doing it. And they ran an ad that said, so when George W. Bush, it was the guy's daughter, and who said it, who was the narrator. So when George W. Bush vetoed the hate bill, it was like my father was drugged behind the truck all over again. And I was like, this is disgusting. You know, and I remember Rush outlining that. That's how long ago that was, man. That's how long ago that was. But I was like, wait a minute, this isn't racist. He's not being racist. He's arguing against using racism as a form of political power. That is a big difference. And I wasn't a partisan guy back then, Don. I wasn't a partisan guy. I was just trying to figure out which way to put my vote. You know, my dad, my family, they never wanted to influence my political views like that, you know, and you know, I of course, any kid goes to his parents like, what do you think? Who are you going to vote for this year, Pop? You know, kind of thing. He's like, make up your own damn mind. You're a man now. Make up your own damn mind. You know, and that's it. So we had to do that. That should be like that again, still, but it's not, Don, as you know. I mean, I got kids. I hear things out of some of their friends' mouths, you know, came right from someone's father or mother, and they have no idea what they're talking about, you know? I mean, you have Disney and Nickelodeon, which, by the way, we were talking about representation before. I really need to dedicate a lot more time to this, but we've been long-term kind of looking at you know, it's funny because I got this idea from a kid, but to look at different channels, and is it really about representation in pop culture, right? Is it about representation on the Supreme Court? Or is it about over-representation of certain groups, right? So we're looking at commercial content, who they choose to cast people in certain roles. And I can tell you right away, even in channels you wouldn't expect this to happen to, but definitely children channels, it seems that they go out of their way to overrepresent certain groups.
Sure.
And out of their way to retool stories that are well-known stories to, like, I don't modernize them is not the right word, Don. Okay, like there's no in a very well-known Western culture kind of thing. Like the remaking of Robin Hood is a good example, although I'm not talking about this in here. But yeah, there's just for some reason, maybe we know what African Americans are 12% of the population, 13% of the electorate, if at best, but they're cast at an incredibly higher rate. And just things like that. Commercials, who was always the subject of ridicule and it's very clear. Laura, she knows what I'm talking about. It's always the white man who's the fool.
Oh yeah.
It's always the white man who plays the fool. And it's whether or not it's clearly the straight white man is the object of the joke more than anything, and it's underrepresented. And Disney, her remarks didn't surprise me at all, because monitoring Disney Channel content the way we have been for a while, there's a very clear anti-white bias, Don. I mean, it very clear, and it's more than that. It's more than just casting different groups and roles that far exceed their current representation. Because isn't this about representation? That's the way they sold it to us, which is why I gave me the idea to look into this. It's not about whether or not TV is holding up the white male patriarchy, right? It's no longer about that. It's about overrepresenting groups and giving them an outsized role in our culture that they really don't have when you look at the overall society. So what I'm saying is, what's wrong with our pop culture representing reality? What's wrong with that? That was supposed to be the stated goal, but it's really not. The stated goal is very clearly to denigrate, traditional values and the majority of this country.
This is about them getting to kids that are younger, as soon as they can get to them. Because there was a study that came out here a couple of years ago. It was a Harvard guy, and he said by the time these kids are 5, the problem with school was that by the time these kids were 5, they had already formed some opinions and some generalizations, and they already had some views of their own. And that's not good, because the school needs to do that. That's not what the school is for. This is about getting to these kids at a very, very young age. Think about this. When you were a kid, did you sit around and wonder who Bugs Bunny was having sex with? Did you wonder how he identified? Of course not. This is disgusting. Let the kids be kids. These people are dying on a hill that says they want gender identity taught by teachers in K through 3. Think about this, people. You want to die on that hill? You go right ahead, because you're going to pay for it at the ballot box.
Yeah,
Disney,
you're going to pay for it.
You want to make 50% of your characters transgender, part of the what's this now? The LGBTQIA. That we've got 2 new letters on there. Knock it off already. Do you really want to do that? Make them 50%? You have any idea how many people will tune out? Not because they're bigots or they don't like people, they don't respect people's opinions. It's because these are for kids. These are shows for kids.
It doesn't, it's not only the matter of the content being inappropriate, it doesn't represent what they see in reality. You know what I mean? So they go above and out of their way. Look, here's another, I'm going to call them out, Naked and Afraid. This was a show that appealed first to clearly, not just masculinity, but because there's a male and a female, but generally this independent streak that runs through survivalists. This last season, it is getting not good reviews, and it's very clear. They're choosing to partner certain people, and all producers make these decisions. But for instance, a transgender male who now identifies as a female, pitted with a weak male role. Okay, so this is, and people see through it. All right. Choosing a very strong and capable white survivalist male to carry a minority disabled woman. All right. So this is what they're doing in an effort to clearly try to normalize. And that's, you know what? You want to show how people can overcome things. That's one thing, Don. But it's very clear here that this is a bias against and not just an attempt to raise people up. It's an attempt to put others down and to hurt, to hurt them in the eyes of pop culture, in the eyes of our national conversation. Another, I can go on and on, but that's a great example. And they did this. They started and had their success off of the interests of people that they are now denigrating.
Yep.
And Witcher, right? Very popular video game. They turned into a series on Netflix. Horrible reviews. Why? Because the very first thing, the number one cited thing, is that one of the diehard fans of this take this very seriously. I've played Witcher on PlayStation. I get it. All right. People love the books. They love it's like a culture, subculture. Triss Merigold is a Celtic magician, a Celtic sorceress. She has fair skin and red hair. They cast a black woman to play Triss Merigold. They tried to respond to those criticisms in season 2, but by lightening her up, I kid you not, Don. It was outrageous. I mean, people just absolutely hate it. It's not that they're, against there being a black sorceress. I mean, this is not, it's because Triss Merigold is who the author made her. Why would you change that for no other good reason? And it's not the only time they did it. Another one is not at all black. She is white, and they made her a black woman. So it's just like these comments, people are like, you just don't mess with things like that. It's not, you're not helping the cause. I see what you're doing, but you're just not helping the cause by doing it. And then they played with the storyline in a way that very much is antithetical to what this storyline is all about. And believe me, there are dozens of these episodes. I mean, dozens of shows and instances. The commercials, that's a whole other ball game. They're even worse than what the actual content seems to suggest. And by the way, Disney loves to put, Nickelodeon too. They love to parade Kamala Harris around. And when we first started doing this, the first thought in my head was, do I really want my daughter to look up to Kamala Harris as a role model? Can we be serious for a second without, put aside the partisanship of it all? Do we want our young women to look at Kamala Harris? Yes, I get it. The first female vice president. But how did Kamala get to where she was? Do we want to showcase her, to hold her up as an example, as a role model for our children? I don't want my daughter to behave like Kamala Harris to get what she wants in the professional world. I hope my daughter is smart enough and has gifts and talents, and I know she does, to be able to get to where she is based on her hard work and the work ethic that I've hopefully bestowed on her, right? And not by sleazing the oldest profession in the world and pretending you're a modern woman while you do it. No, you still reduced yourself to that.
Yeah, and I guess really all I have to say on that is it's like the passage of time. Time will pass through the passage of time.
You know what, Don?
Was that succinct?
An unjust war. This is an unjust war, Don. Why? Because I don't know if you know this. Russia is a bigger country, okay? And bigger countries should not be allowed to invade smaller countries because it's like a bully, right? And we don't like bullies on the playground, and Russia's like a bully on the playground. I mean, this is some of the dumbest stuff. But again, she did not get to where she is because of her mind. Okay, let's get freaking real, and we do a disservice. Yeah, well, right.
All right. I got to say this:
our children, when we don't tell, when we fake this,
Yep. She got up to that point because of all the things that that you're talking about. But she actually, it did have something to do with her mind being picked by Joe Biden. She was the insurance policy.
That's right. That's
she
true.
was, well, at least I'm not that bad. Just kind of like Joe Biden was for Barack Obama, right? the insurance
Yeah, that's
policy.
right. That's yeah, that's true. That's true. And that's the thing that worries me about the Supreme Court justice when we start picking people for roles, though, because they check certain boxes.
Yeah.
You know, look at Kamala Harris. I mean, she
Yeah.
is a Joe Biden heartbeat away from the presidency. And by the way, the first thing that jumped in my head when she was making that ridiculous rambling statement, which was completely illogical, there have been smaller nations that were much stronger than larger nations. Like physical land, is not everything. Alexander had Macedonia, and he took 50,000 soldiers and conquered the entire known freaking world. All right, but the logic doesn't even hold. What about the war? What about Iraq? We're a larger country. We invaded Iraq. We're a larger country. We invaded Afghanistan. We're a larger country. We invaded Vietnam. We're a larger country. We invaded Korea. I mean, just on and on and on. And by the way, got whooped for it in 2 of those instances. So and none of it even made sense, Don. Even if it was true and that analogy held up, it didn't make sense. The Japanese kicked Russia's butt in that early 20th century war. So
China.
What are you talking about? Right. And the Japanese have been walloping China for thousands of years.
Yep.
So it's so stupid. I mean, it's scary, though, because, again, like I said, but this is the problem with ignoring all of that stuff and pretending that she's some kind of a role model just because Disney and Nickelodeon are on a crusade to tell our women that.
What somebody should really be asking on this is why do they keep allowing her to go out unscripted? Why would you do that? I mean, you know it's going to be gobbledygook. It's going to be word salads. It's going to be
Team Biden loves
horrible. But so who's doing that? I mean, she should even say, I'm not going out there unscripted again. Look what happened last time. Give me something. Or are they giving it to her and she's just saying, I don't know. Is it a laziness thing? Is it I don't know. Somebody should be asking that, though.
I think, too, though, from the White House perspective, if you're Team Biden, you don't care at all because, like you said,
good for him.
It's like, shit's good for him. Just when you think that I'm like a senile old man crapping my Depends in the middle of the night, wandering the halls of the residency of the White House like Secret Service keeps leaking to everybody. Just when you think that's a danger, just remember, it could be worse. Look at this one over here. And polls suggest that, by the way. She does in our polling when we asked, she did worse against Donald Trump.
And what I'm saying is the leaders inside the Democrat Party, so the Schumers, the Pelosi's, that's who should be asking that question. I hope they don't. I hope they keep letting it go the way it is. I'm loving the way it's going, but man, I'd sure be asking that question. Why do you keep letting her go out there or talk to her or whoever you have to talk to? Because it impacts them. It all goes downhill from there. I mean, like I said, these midterms are going to be so more impactful than they should have been. If there was minimization of things going on. Right now, they're trying to go to secondary issues, right? Oh, the evil oil companies. Yep. And even the secondary issues are worse than the primary issues. So I'm good with the way things are going. But if I was in the Democrat leadership, I'd be like, do not let her do that anymore.
Yeah, her staff, this is point 2, says Kamala just doesn't read any of the briefs anymore. And Lynn, you're right about that. And by the way, somebody else had a comment up too. 80s airing. According her logic too, the United Kingdom or Great Britain at the time, England even further back. This is one of the most powerful empires the world has ever seen. It was a tiny freaking island. The Romans started as a small little tribe called the Etruscans, and they conquered, more landmass than Alexander even. So just, what we are 212 over. Don, I really want you to get in and tell people what you talked about this week, the interview that you had on the channel earlier this week, and then also, what you've been up to. I really want to get that in. I didn't even realize it was 212.
Yeah.
Amazingly, the audience has grown as we kept talking, though. So
good. We had Stand Up America US show with MG Paul Valley. It's every Monday usually it's at noon. We're going to be at 11 o'clock again this week. But we had Laura Logan on, and we had her on for like 55 minutes. And it was amazing. She was just on fire. She's in the middle of some controversy with Fox News. She dished on that. She, in fact, she made the comment that there's like 3 good people at Fox News, and the rest of them she doesn't have the time of day for, which is really cool. But it's also really unique too, as you know. I mean, I remember having Andrea Tantaros on, and when she was in the middle of her problems with Fox News, and so she wouldn't talk about it. She could have, but she didn't. Lara, not a problem. She fired away, and she was firing on all cylinders, and it was an amazing interview with her. One of the few true journalists that are left out there that actually do investigative journalism. Cheryl Atkinson, you think maybe a couple, and that's about it. So it was a really cool interview having her on. We also had Michael Maloof. He's an intelligence guy who had some pretty interesting information on the Ukraine, Russia stuff too. But the Lara Logan thing was on fire. Our numbers have been going through the roof for the show for General Valley. So excited about that. Excited to see that. And this Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, he's got Ted and Shemaine Nugent on the program live. That's obviously Ted's always a great interview too. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we've got a guy named Thierry Laurent, who is an intelligence specialist in France, who was embedded in with like the military in the Ukraine. He's got a lot of information. Nobody's talking about this stuff because it doesn't fit the narrative, but it's real stuff. This guy lived it. He's bringing the receipts Monday too. So we'll have him on the program as well. For me on Saturday, I've got Representative Andy Biggs. He'll be back, and we're going to play a clip of the Lara Logan thing as well. Of course, you'll be on with us. Peter Hussey will be on with the latest national security stuff. So we've got a lot of cool stuff going on this Saturday at noon Eastern time. So DonSmithShow.locals.com. Check us out. We're just doing Rumble now. We're not doing anything else. So everybody's been kind of finding us now, going, okay, they're just on Rumble now. We won't go back to the other one. So just pushing forward with Rumble and doing that. But also wanted to, if you don't mind me throwing this out there, I've had a lot of people know I do public relations as well. So that's kind of part of the communication stuff. And I've got clients so it's not just the big tech shutting people down on Twitter and, all the other things that we know are going on. It's now going into the marketing side of things. So I've got clients who are getting shut down on their trying to send out just an email, right? Hey, I've got a book out, or, here's what's going on. They're getting shut down because it's too religious. It's too right wing. So they're using all these same criteria that they're using to shut people's accounts down on social media. They're using them to shut their email marketing down. So as you know, with your help, we put together in our own server so we can do our own email marketing, and you won't get shut down. So, I think that's, you got to have a place to go. You got MailChimp, Constant Contact, and they're shadow banning too. So you might pay to send out 1,000 emails or whatever on that service, and they won't even send them all out. People aren't getting them, but you're still paying for it. So there's something really wrong with what's going on the censorship side when it comes to marketing, trying to market your product. So,
and I was going to ask you about it anyway, about that. I mean, the need to create really these parallel economies, and the name of it is so fitting. So for people who don't know, want to go and check it out, or may even have the need to, FAM, First Amendment Marketing, because that's what it's all about. I mean, Don, how scary is it that the potential to lose the ability to reach for certain people, to reach certain audiences, whether it's to make a living, for a campaign, for your brand, for whatever it may be, to hold a house list if you're a media personality? Before Don, you had nowhere to go if Constant Contact or AWeber or MailChimp threw you off, which we had happen a lot to people. We know a lot of people that basically just were told you can no longer house your list here. So it's so outrageous to me. And then we have the nerve to talk about Vladimir Putin, by the way. Some real audacity. I'm gonna worry about the own stuff, but it's firstamentmentmarketing.com. And what else do you do there? You guys, you do a lot.
Yeah, so we can do the social media stuff. If some people aren't even on social media yet, so we can take it from the very beginning, help you set up your account, and help you grow it, help you work it. We'll even do the postings for you if that's something you want to do. So we do a lot of different things. Email marketing, we do even direct mail marketing is getting censored now. So you can't send it out in an email. You can't send somebody something in the mailbox saying, "Hey, here's what I've got. I'm doing this," or even you're a candidate and you're trying to raise money. So a lot of different things we can do on there. It's a full service marketing. So firstamentmentmarketing.com. You can check out the site and it'll show you some more details of the things we do. But we're not going to let them shut us down. We are not going to do that. So if you know anybody who's getting shut down, or if you have anything you wanted to do with email marketing, we'll even help you create the whole thing, the whole messaging. And obviously that's kind of our specialty is messaging and knowing what words get people to respond to things and stuff like that. So firstamendmentmarketing.com. If you need anything or you know anybody who does, send them our way and we'll make sure that they can stay in business.
Yeah, absolutely essential. Even, branding wise, you start a venture, something like that, like the Inside the Numbers logos you saw, the Big Data Poll, First Amendment Marketing. We had a problem where we lost our original designer because Johnson & Johnson didn't like my challenging of some flaws in their industry and their assumption. And that was the person who designed those original logos. That was his biggest client. And they came to him and said, you either drop the People's Pundit or you lose Johnson & Johnson.
Yep.
And honestly, it didn't hurt my feelings that he obviously chose to not work with us anymore. It's outrageous. Everyone's got to make a living, and I don't begrudge him for it. But yeah, I mean, now though, it's so essential. Find somebody else to work with who's equally talented, doesn't harbor ill will towards other people based on their views, right? Yeah. And without Don doing what he's doing, there will be more, Don. You know that. This is just the beginning. Even if Republicans take over, are they going to fix MailChimp, basically telling people like us that we can't host a mailing list? I mean, this is just nuts, man. It's nuts. Are they going to go after PayPal for refusing to take transactions from certain people? We'll see. I doubt it. I think the real solution here, I mean, before any of that comes into play, is for people to create a parallel economy where there is no discrimination like that, and that's what Don's doing at First Amendment Marketing. It's good stuff. So tomorrow, Don, noon.
Tomorrow noon, we got Representative Andy Biggs. We've got part of the Lara Logan interview. We've got you and Peter Hussey on. A lot of stuff to go over there. I mean, there's just so much. I'm going to give you some incredible fact-checking stuff, right? The new fact-checkers stuff. now they're just flat out throwing out crazy opinions, and that's a fact. That's a fact. This would have only minimally done. It's like unbelievable how far they're taking this thing. The farther they take it, the more they hurt their own cause. Because when you look at
they never retract anything.
Never.
They never fix or retract anything. Never. Those fact checks stay up, even though they are proven demonstrably false at this point now. Things from the pandemic we know about. I'll just say it. The vaccines, Donald Trump's statements about late-term abortion with Democrats, they are still up. And we went over that with the show. Even though Democrats just tried to pass a bill proving him correct. It's just incredible. They are the worst. And I know from firsthand experience, like PolitiFact is filled with a bunch of dirty ass people who have no interest in the facts or the truth at all. They're interested in smearing for their preferred political party. That's what they're interested in.
Let me just read this one to you real quick. It's just a minute. So this is PolitiFact. This is PolitiFact because what's making one of the things that's really hurting. This is one of the things that's really hurting this administration is obviously the gas prices and the fact that Keystone keeps coming up. And so it's not good for them. So check this out, just to straighten you guys out so you know what's really going on here. The halt of the Keystone XL pipeline, which many Republicans have pointed to as a cause for rising prices, would have likely had a very minuscule impact on the global oil trade. The action also did not shut down any existing supply. This is being presented to you as just a fact.
Right.
Think about this. Would have likely, okay. When you see those two words together, that's like not a fact. Would have likely. I imagine it would have. I mean, it's another way of saying that. Would have likely had a very minuscule impact. That is somebody's opinion. That is one person's opinion being told to you from a fact-checking site as an absolute fact. Think about that.
And they ignore all of the indirect production that would have come as a result of a more friendly policy. So it's more than just what he did with the Keystone. You send a signal when you do things like that, and you shut everybody, you clam all the other producers up at that point. And this is the kind of game they play too with something like tax cuts, by the way. They said there was before trending GOP tax scam based on this stupid idea. Everybody knows that static scoring is garbage, yet they will run those fact checks based on faux static scoring that never bears out in reality. In the end, They said that Donald Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act would add to deficit spending and ultimately X amount of dollars over the next 10 years, because that's what the CBO projected. The CBO was wrong. A year later, the CBO got some real numbers and said, actually, not only did it not add to the deficit, it resulted in increased revenues to the Treasury because of increased economic activity. Do you think PolitiFact went back and changed that fact check? Nope, they did not. It is still up to this day. It's incredible level of dishonesty. And
their job is to stop you from doing your own research.
That's right. That's right.
Just,
they want you to be lazy.
No need to look anywhere else. We did all
experts.
that for you. Here you go.
We're truth tellers. We're experts.
Truth tellers.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. Sure. Well, I'll see you tomorrow at noon, my friend. Thanks for, as always, for joining us. Great conversation.
Thanks for putting up
thanks
with me.
Thanks for hanging out and sticking. Blowing past the 2 o'clock hour. We get a habit of doing this, man. I'm sorry. I got to tighten the ship a little bit.
We have no respect for their time.
I know, right? Well, tell Brenda, we said hello as always. Give her our best, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Love to Laura and the kids.
As always, my friend. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Don Smith, ladies and gentlemen, don't miss the show tomorrow, noon Eastern Standard Time. All right, definitely on Rumble. Don Smith Show on Rumble. Same thing with me, by the way. Look at the content we spoke about today. They could absolutely any day decide that something I bring up they don't like, and I'm gone. So you won't get that notification if you don't sign up on Rumble now. You're not going to get that notification, even if you still watch on YouTube, folks. I strongly suggest signing up on Rumble just so you know when that day comes, because it will come. All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Getter at People's Pundit on Getter, on Twitter still at People's_Pundit. But while you're on Rumble, check out the Join Locals button right up there. And in matter of fact, it's right underneath the video right now. Like the videos, like the content, join my community on Locals. This is a great time to do so. Guess what? It came. This stupid little thing is what I've been waiting on. It did come. So hopefully we'll be able to move back to Wirecast soon. But if you guys want to shoot the you-know-what with me, now that it's here, I'm going to give it a test run and see. I may do it later tonight even. But I want to go back to the, like I've said to you, I want to go back to the old software so we can do a lot more when the elections come. And then we can get some people to start working on that API stuff. All right. So I'm out like trout. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell on YouTube. If you watch, that'll let you know when we're going to go live. All right. Monday, we have What Are the Odds with Barnes and Barris. We will be covering Orban's election. There's some movement in the polls there. The world community will have a canary. He seems to be pulling ahead again at the last minute. So we will be talking a lot about that, as well as a lot of other content. Expect the I told you so victory lap when it comes to the collapse of the Russian ruble, which is now completely recovered. All right. And more, as always, a lot more. So Monday, that's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But before that, tomorrow, noon Eastern Standard Time, Don Smith Show on donsmithshow.locals.com, or just go right to his Rumble channel, and we'll let you know when I'm about to go on. I'll remind you with the tweet and the Locals post. What else? Really cool pictures for merchandise, people who've gotten the merchandise. Some have not told us, though, whether or not we're allowed to use it in our little collage. So please make sure you do that. Send us pictures of you wearing your People's Pundit merch. Super cozy, super comfortable. I know we're moving into the summer, so grab your t-shirts. I love them. And I know people have been very happy with the hoodies. I told you they were cozy, right? I usually wear the damn hoodie every day if you can. It is super cozy. But definitely send us pictures, Laura and I. Let us know whether or not we can use them and show them in our little commercial break we're cutting. All right. What else? Did I get it all? I think I did. April form for the new public polling project is in the description below, but you can always go and find it at bigdatapoll.com/public polling project. That'll redirect you over to it. You might notice Big Data Poll's been going through a lot of different changes. There will be more this weekend. We're also adding the partisan affiliation trend, the employment indexes, the social desirability bias tracking data. So if you are a member of locals, the more detailed stuff like that, like social bias questions, you'll have access to that. That will be password protected. All right. So keep an eye on it. I am starting to be satisfied with how it looks. I didn't want to just slap it up there. I really wanted it to look the way I wanted it to look. And I'm pretty happy with where it's going right now. So, all right, with that in mind, if you do go and contribute to the Public Polling Project, please do not forget to leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see. Squeaky wheel gets the oil, as my old pappy used to say. Right? The loudest voice will get my attention. And the more people say a certain thing, the more I'll be inclined to put it on the questionnaire. Right? Makes sense. Also, locals, shoot me some ideas. Who else can we put Donald Trump against? Who can we put him against? Somebody had made some really good observations on locals that, you know what, Warren performed horribly. So maybe there are other people. I'm open to that. I agree. She wasn't a very good presidential candidate. Bernie Sanders is a great option. Yes, he's probably going to be 100 by the time it comes around again. Just 90. But he still probably is going to run. So we might as well do it. Biden, I just don't see as a viable. Well, he's the sitting president. We'll continue to put him in the questionnaire. I just don't see him as viable. And we need to start polling other people to see if one does better than another. I wouldn't be surprised at all to find that Bernie Sanders polls better against Donald Trump than Joe Biden does at this moment. That wouldn't shock me in the least. But we'll see. All right. So get us your suggestions. Give us some names off a very, very shallow Democratic bench. All right. And we'll definitely consider them. All right. With that in mind, I'm out. Special thanks to the Bone Band as always. Everybody had a great weekend, safe weekend. See you tomorrow at noon Eastern Time on Don Show. Deuces.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show